know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, family. I hope you guys are doing well. It's so nice to be, back seeing you guys. Well, like fake seeing you, like seeing you online. How's it going, Taaqiy? It's nice for you to be joining me.
Everything is going well. It's good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why. We don't know what's going on with this camera. We don't know what's going on. But listen, we want to first just make sure, just regular housekeeping things. You guys have got to like, share this video, okay, and comment, and make sure you send it to, as many people as you know, okay. That's very super important. And also, we have lots of things that you can do in terms of supporting the movement. You want to go over some of those things, Taaqiy?
Yeah, I think the first thing, first and foremost, definitely want to say thank you to everyone for their hard work and dedication to this movement. This is something that's real to us, and we've had an opportunity to connect with a lot of people here, and see Michelle in the audience, a few other people, Ron Green, a couple other folks, Tiffany, just a lot of our real strong, happy people. Definitely shout out to them and go through some of the names a little bit later. But first and foremost, if you're not signed up to the newsletter, you definitely want to make sure that you do that. We are about 1,000 away from another milestone on YouTube. We hope all that are listening are already subscribed, and if not, please subscribe to us on YouTube and tell a friend to tell a friend, which is essential to what we're doing in this organization of our people. So definitely that. I'm sure everyone here by now have seen HAPI, so the film. Don't really want to talk about that, you know what I mean? But if you haven't seen it, definitely want to get it for someone, get it for a close family member or a friend. Let them know what the HAPI Movement's all about. Definitely want to, see Felicia putting the names on the screen right now. Shout out to everyone.
Yeah, you know what, Taaqiy? I just have to I want to co-sign on something you said, because this one right here, Miss Carol. So Miss Carol, let me tell you, she is 81 years old, and she has been supporting us for a minute, right? And it's because it's like what you said. So she's seen HAPI, but she was like, it was important for her sister to see it. So she ordered another copy so that she can take it to her sister's house so her sister can see HAPI. But she, I just want to say, that our elders, like our new elders, they like something new now. They doing new stuff over here, because you talk about somebody, just being active. And she gave me a bunch of different things that we need to not only do, but like listen to a radio show. And she's like, they do the same stuff you're doing. So look, shout out to all of our elders. This is what eldership really looks like when you are trying to make sure that the youth, is understanding and continuing your legacy. So thank you, Miss Carol. I want to give you a public shout out. And yeah, Rashamela, our whole crew is up in here. People that's, partied with us in Egypt and everything. And shout out to Ronnie. Ronnie right here. It was his birthday this weekend. So shout out to Ronnie. But go ahead, Taaqiy.
Yeah, no. So, definitely this is, a good opportunity. I feel like this is kind of it's been a while. It's been about a month since I've been on. So it's definitely a good opportunity just to kind of just hang out with people and see what's going on in the HAPI world.
Yes.
So we have a special show tonight. The significance of African sacred scientists, but none other than, the famed scholar, Professor Small. Be happy to kind of talk with him about that and really delve into what it means to us and the significance of it. So we're looking forward to that discussion. I know it's going to be a very enriching, very powerful discussion. Like Felicia said, please share, like, and comment on the video. We definitely want to make sure we get this out to as many folks as possible. And as always, you can show your love definitely with the HAPI Film Cash App or the Super Chats. It's significant. It does helps us move the movement forward. So we definitely want to say thank you to everyone who's been a huge support.
Yeah. And you know what? Before we get started, I wanted to say this. So this weekend I celebrated, and I know you guys, because you guys are so connected to what we're doing and our families and this and that. So, you know, my son is attending my alma mater, which is Howard University, and we had our homecoming. And homecoming this year was it was super special because not only was my son's first homecoming, but it was also my goddaughter's first homecoming. So shout out to Sonia and shout out to Kevin. But you know, it started me thinking, and I was talking to my goddaughter's mom, and we were talking about just what it felt like and the importance of homecoming. And you know, I wanted people just to understand this. That if you could imagine like returning to a place that was designed to cultivate like your genius, right? To find no flaws within you, nothing about you is a mistake, or an error or anything to be fixed. It's a place that loves you as is because you are you and you are one of us and we belong to each other, which is a tie-in to how Professor Small is always talking about look at me. You are me and I am you. And because you feel that way, that's why you take care of each other, right? And so it was a weekend of, you know, of all these, you know, the collective spirits taking care of each other because we looked at each other and saw each other. And it's just a testament that, you know, that's on a small scale. Even though Howard has one of the biggest homecomings, like an extra 100,000 people come to DC to celebrate. But it's also like, you know, this can be modeled in our community. It should be modeled in our community. This whole idea of, you know, taking care of each other. So I just wanted to just kind of share that before we get started. And you know what? We see.
I think that's essential because, you know, that's actually I feel right now just like a homecoming. It's been so long since I've been on. So
100%. You got a rusty over there, Taaqiy.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get it out.
Yes. So you know, I keep seeing professors is jumping in and out. And he's not in right this minute, but I also wanted to tell you guys, listen, One Africa, if you guys have not seen the One Africa conference that we had back in April in Detroit, shout out to Detroit, you know, make sure that you guys can actually go to our website, happyfilm.com, and pick up as soon as you hit the button, we go straight to Vimeo and you're able to either stream it or you could rent it. And it's only $20. So please make sure you guys support. You know, it's like 13 of our elders were up in the house, you know, giving these dynamic conversations about, you know, just what it means to, you know, for like really what unity looks like amongst us. And so please make sure you check that out. And again, make sure you are liking and sharing this video. Yeah, I don't know, Professor, I tell you this, out of all days, you know, and he was excited to have this conversation. You know, I can't find him. Yes. But, you know, and also family, another reason to get connected to the newsletter and make sure that you guys are connected to the newsletter, that we have your email, is because I'm seeing a lot of people who travel with us. You know, there's Kepra, Kevin Arden right there. He came with us to Egypt in May. Also in the house, I see Tiffany right there. Peace, family. Yes, Tiffany also came with us. And, you know, and if you want to know about the next trip, you want to make sure that you are, you know, connected to the newsletter. You just go to happyfilm.com, hit the button that says get connected, and then you are connected. Okay. And yes, yes, right there. Yep, I see everybody. Okay. I don't know we actually don't know where Professor went. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, In the meantime, while we wait for Professor to come on, we have a little special guest who's also can talk a lot about African sacred sciences. He don't know he's about to talk about African sacred sciences, but and he's smiling backstage, but he's about to come on and talk about African sacred sciences. Okay, let me drink your water. Go ahead, drink a little water. I'm about to bring you in. Yes, I was trying to wait, we got something cooking over here, but you know what? We ain't got nothing left. You know what? I know you guys in the audience is like, what's going on? But you'll understand once we get started. But we're going to bring on Dr. Oba T'Shaka. Okay, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about African sacred sciences. Okay, how you doing, Dr. T'Shaka?
Okay, I see this is going to be some jazz here.
Improvisation, improv.
You're pretty good at it anyway.
Yeah, this is improv. Family, but do you have such a treat? You guys know how I feel about Dr. T'Shaka. So this is easy for him. He got this. So how you doing, Dr. T'Shaka?
Doing fine, Brother Grant. I've heard about you. Good to see you.
Oh, likewise. Good to see you too as well. I'm glad to be on with you today. So,
and the piece you have in the background, you can send that to me for my next birthday. That's beautiful, that Egyptian piece. Did you get that in Kemet?
No. That was actually a gift. My mother got that for me here in the States.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Uh-huh. So the two of you are partners?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I can. You know what? No. So Taaqiy started the whole HAPI movement. It was, he along with
There he is.
Wait, Professor, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, look, we have a special guest who just happened to pop in. That was just in the neighborhood.
Well, something was even my phone got cut off. That meant something more than me was messing with me tonight.
Let me tell you. Exactly. So, well, you know what? We're going to just.
How you doing, Oba?
Good, brother. Happy birthday again.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so you know what, Professor? So look, we got you on here under false pretenses.
What does that mean?
That means that we have a bunch of people here that want to actually celebrate your birthday. So Dr. T'Shaka is one. We got Miss Dorielle in the house.
Hi, Dorielle. Look at you.
We got Lorenzo Small. And for King Simon.
Oh, wow. Oh, my king. Hello, King. I just spoke to you. And you said,
happy birthday.
Brother Lorenzo.
Yeah, I see you too.
Greetings.
Okay.
Happy birthday, Professor.
Well, thank you very much. I couldn't figure, but something I couldn't figure that I have never had that where I couldn't get online. Then I get on my phone and it wouldn't let me turn, and then it blocked me out with some little black dinosaur thing running around. What the hell? But it's cool.
It's cool.
I had to call one of those juju spirits to correct things.
Yeah,
so it's
Well, you know what, King Simon actually said something about that. King Simon, tell everybody about what's going on in the cosmos.
How you doing, family? How's everything? How y'all feeling? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Oh no, I was saying on her chat that because today is the 23rd. Usually, because it adds up to a number 5. 5 deals with communications and technology, so usually it can run rampant and run a little crazy. It happened to me on my show just earlier today as I was interviewing one of Dr. Moses Powell's student, Master Lumumba. So it was going crazy. So, and it's been happening all over the place today with a lot of other friends of mine. So it is what it is. We just have to prepare.
Until I was 21, I celebrated the 23rd as my birthday.
Yes.
And then I came home from the war. And I never had a birth certificate, midwife, born in the South, in the woods. So I needed a birth certificate for something. And my sister went to South Carolina for me. And she came back with a birth certificate that said 22nd. So starting on my 22nd birthday, I started celebrating the 22nd. So, and I asked my mother, but my mother said I was born near midnight. So the lady who reported, you know, you don't report, maybe at the end of the month, she reported all the births she gave, you know?
Right.
You know, I celebrate both days, 22nd and 23rd.
Okay, we did it. Congratulations.
We can celebrate the whole year.
Yeah.
That's good too.
So, you know, the cool thing, Professor, is that, wait, I'm sorry. Well, somebody got to turn off the mute their microphone. Yeah. Lorenzo, you have two things open. You got to close one.
Got it.
Okay, we're gonna close this phone. So so Professor, you know, you like super special to us. You know, you hold the you know, you've been actually on Happy Talks longer than anybody, right?
Really?
Did you just say really?
Yeah.
What? This is the
I know that someone that will call me an hour before a show and says, "Can you be on?" Or 30 minutes and goes, "Can you be on?" So I guess if I did that enough, I probably beat everybody, huh?
Okay, so I don't know who you're talking about. You maybe talking about Taaqiy. I give you ample time.
Mr. Taaqiy, yes. But obviously I do it, so the person who called me must be very important to me that I do it every time.
Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you. If it was me, I'm saying thank you if it was me. But yeah, so I want to first just start off the celebrations by saying, listen, I appreciate you, brother, so much. And, you know, you are more than just, you know, a professor to me. Sometimes you're professor, sometimes you're brother James, sometimes you're just James, sometimes you Jay, you like a whole bunch of things. But one thing I like is that you keep it 100 when it comes to spirituality or African sacred sciences. And you are, you know, I just genuinely really appreciate you and love you. So just happy birthday, happy solar return, happy all of that good stuff.
No, and I appreciate that. You know, for years, I didn't celebrate birthday, decades. I didn't celebrate a birthday. Wow. And I would celebrate my children's birthday only with them because I thought people use it just to have a party. And I didn't want to raise a bunch of partiers. But it didn't work because they party every birthday that comes up in the family. I walked in here yesterday after going to the store, and there was balloons everywhere and gold tablecloth and gold plates and cups and a bunch of grandkids coming from everywhere. All of them got a little phone in their hand taking pictures. I go like, wait, and that's cool. I'm grateful. I'm totally grateful. And my wife is the most thoughtful lady. It got cold a few weeks ago, right? And I was working outside, and I couldn't find but one pair of gloves, and that one had a hole in it in the finger. So you know what that woman bought? She didn't even know about that. So when I walked back in the house from the car wash a little while ago, she goes, "Your birthday present is on the table." And what was it? 2 pairs of gloves. So I know how to feel what's going on with me, you know?
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah, and you get a lot of love in the chat. You know, before, no one knew that this was a surprise except for the people on screen.
Oh, wow.
Other people that
I solely appreciate you. And Lorenzo and his queen, you know, y'all always be with me every day. I'll be getting something from them. They're like the coolest people in the world.
So blessed to be in your presence.
Yeah. But the thing, you know, I was just thinking today, because I'm going to be on a program on I think the 5th in DC. And people have been giving me grief from all over the world. I know you're not going to be on that program. Oh, that ain't possible. I had to cuss out a few people because nobody tell me where to speak, before whom to speak, or what to speak about. No one asked me, Brother Small, I heard there's some controversy. Are you going to be in that program? What is it that might draw you there? Why is that? Because we tend to say we're talking freedom, but then we want to talk freedom to a selective group of people. You can't do that. If those brothers and sisters have taken a position that some of us may think is inappropriate or incorrect, then it is our duty, especially elders, to come right before them and tell them that, you know? and point out the contradictions as best we can and let them handle it from there. But I don't isolate any element of my community. I deal with the Christian folks, the Muslim folks, the Hebrew folks, the Moorish folks, the no religion folks, the whomever folks, because the things that have broken us into little pieces affects every one of us on the screen today. You know, it affects all of our family. These bodies, these houses, these temples we've been loaned to do this journey will deteriorate, and we'll have to give them up. So in that short space of time between 1945 and now, and hope I get a few more nouns, my job is to do one thing: try to make the situation better in the minds of the African peoples of the world. That's what I do. I love them because I love me. I love me because I love the divine itself, which is the totality of the universe. There's no thing there. There's only one thing that exists. Only one thing exists. We're a part of that one thing. Okay? It's like our bodies. We got a heart, we got a liver, we got a lung, we got intestines, we got cells, we got molecules, we got protons, we got neutrons. It all makes up the one. Well, that's the way the whole of everything works. And this disease, and it gets diseases, I mean, things get disorganized. This disease that came out of the northern mountains 2,000 years ago have caused an extraordinary disorder in all of us. And it is our job to try and correct the disorder. I mean, at the end of the day, we are physicians, whether we want to be or not, if we're trying to solve the problem. We are physicians. I don't think they call, back in ancient Kemet, I see people got a word and even love for priest and priestess, but it doesn't mean the same thing we mean when we say priest and priestess and preacher and stuff. They were basically talking about scientists who had skills in specific area of how the universe works, on its macrocosm and its microcosm. And so I want the whole world to know, yep, I will be in Washington, D.C. on the 5th. I will be with the, what do they call themselves? The
FBA.
Foundational Black Americans.
FBA.
And we want them to explain to me what y'all talking about. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to explain to them who we are. I'm an African. I'm the original human being on the planet Earth. Now, we can define ourselves in context to explain our current geographical situation. That's cool. But you can't define yourself out of your actual reality. You call yourself hoop-a-doo, you're still a damn African. You can call yourself the bird flying low over the storm, you're still an African. So call yourself the bird, but don't deny your essence, because it tells me you haven't really made a step in the right direction. Oh, but I know you're going to give me something on that. I could feel your spirit with that piece. But I raised that because I want it raised, because we cannot leave certain topics undiscussed in our community while at the same time saying that it's causing strife and harm and pain in the community. And if we don't step to it, say we're doing, you know? So I don't throw stones unless I'm ready to run through the door and come in the house. I throw the stones at.
Okay.
I'm glad.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Professor.
We needed that. That's right.
Okay, so we can just go round and wish our happy birthdays or happy solar return to Professor Small. Doriel, will you go next?
Blessed and honored greetings to you,
Thank you.
Baba, Professor Small. So I want to say this in a couple of different ways. I want to say, of course, we all Twatintur. I want to say from the Twi Madasi. I want to say from Zulu Ngiyabonga, from Tswana Kielaboha. Swahili we also know Asante Sana, Ga Oyeradon, and Hausa Nagudi bless you and thank you for continuing to keep the culture, to pass it from the generation before to the generation of the now, so that we can pass it to the generation of tomorrow, which is the generation of today. Peace and blessings. I love you dearly.
Thank you, sister. Peace and blessings. And I love you too, because the thing we call love is the glue that binds us together. That is the glue.
100%. All right, Lorenzo.
Oh my goodness. Happy solar return, my spiritual cousin. It's wonderful being able to share this moment in time with you. Myself and my wife extend our love, extend our joy for having been able to visually meet you. We're still looking for the physical meeting, but it'll happen. And we're just honored that we're part of your spiritual family and blessed, as I said before, to be able to share your soul.
Mahat Hotep, from the beginning of being, Professor Small. Ashe.
Thank you, my beautiful sister. Now, Lorenzo and his wife, they be in touch with me all the time.
I know.
And every program and discussion I see that's really trying to move our people forward, I see their name up on there, especially supporting HAPI. So I send my deepest respect and honor and love to that beautiful couple, Queen and King. You're the foundation of civilization. Now, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And that's Sister Faye Abdullah. The Abdullah family, they're my folks right there.
These your folks?
In the text, yeah. Love y'all, Faye. And tell my brother I got your birthday message last night, too.
All right, that's what's up. You know what? I'm just trying to figure out, like, I know all these people, specifically King Simon. I can't believe how quiet you are. You've never in your life been this quiet. Well, you got Dr. T'Shaka. Now, Dr. T'Shaka, you listen, I know we only know each other for a little while now, but you're not quiet either. You guys are so quiet. This is not what I was envisioning.
We waiting for everybody to say what they say. You know what it is. But I
you gave us 2 minutes.
Yes, it.
2 minutes.
Exactly.
I don't think I said 2 minutes.
You said
really.
But I you know, let me say this, because I spoke to him early that morning for his birthday, and called him, and I reached out to our brother, and you know, I've known Professor Small from afar while he had locks back in the day at the UAM back in the day, Slave Theater. You know, speaking at those places. So I've been there from when I was young, when Lance Shabazz used to be outside and Dr. Khaled used to come through and everybody. So I grew up watching Professor Smalls. And I just want to thank you, Professor, for always being that accountable elder, that jejna, to show us the way and keep us. And we're going to be doing something here in Georgia. Since I moved to Georgia, I can't wait to bring him in. And let's honor the elder in a most great way. Out here. So thank you very much, Professor Small, for all you've done. And, you know, this is like my second time tonight honoring an elder and giving them their flowers. So thank you, Baba, for all that you do and all the advice that you've given me over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, King. I mean, this young brother, it doesn't matter what I call on him for. He's always there. Even when I don't call him, he think I need something. I look at my Cash App and there's some money from Kingston. I'm like, I didn't ask for any money, but he just thinks of me that way. I remember once I needed some flyers for the Malcolm X May 19th birthday celebration. I didn't have no money. I gave him whatever little bit of money. He came to my car with 2 big boxes of handouts. I still got some 5 years later. Because that's King Simon. He steps to and be responsible for helping people, trying to do the things for the community. And he's always been that, you know, from day one.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. I have to step out, but thank you very much again, Bob. And thanks to the whole panel, Taaqiy, Felicia, all the great ones here. Thank y'all very much. Okay.
Thank you, King Simon.
Love y'all all. Love you all.
Love you, brother.
Peace and love. Okay.
Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, you got to get your readings with King Simon. He's no joke. Once he knows your birthday, that's it. Like he's going to know it forever. And so in any type of conversation he's having with anybody, he's like, oh, that's such birthday and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, make sure y'all reach out if you're even thinking about getting your numbers to King Simon. All right, Dr. T'Shaka.
Yeah, James, happy birthday again.
Thank you, Oba, who also called me much earlier and really lift my spirits.
Yeah, James, you're very special to me. And the main reason is that you're just a good brother. And for me, that's the most important thing in life. I don't care what a person's status is, their titles are, I don't care any of that. The first thing is quality of the character, and you're a good human being. You're a loving brother. And as you said, you love yourself and you love your people, because you can't love your people unless you love yourself. And you come out of this South Carolina culture, and then you've embraced African culture. You've been on many journeys spiritually. And all of that has brought this bundle of love to African people, because you're forever doing something. I see you on every show almost every day. And I'm wondering where you get the energy for that. You know what I mean? But I know it's coming from the fact that you love your people. You love Africa.
Oh.
Your buddy, Dr. J, and his wife, you all love Africa so much that all of y'all been to Africa almost as much as you've been in your house. You know what I mean? So that love is global and it's worldwide, but it's special to me because one reason why that you're special to me is that we both have things in common, which is what makes friendship, and we've been brothers in struggle. And James and I have known each other for 40, 45 years or longer. And you're active in the African-centered movement, and you all and Dr. J played a special role in that component in New York, where you all grabbed the African-centered curriculum movement in New York with Dr. Adelaide Sanford and carried that forward. And then you were active in supporting us in the National Black United Front. So that was extremely important. But another thing that I think is really important, because you're an embodiment of something else. Because in Western culture, ethics is kind of like a category. You know what I mean? They got a category they call ethics. Now, the people who talk about ethics usually aren't ethical. You know what I mean? And but with us, ethics or truth, the pursuit of it is the basis for wisdom. And I would say that one of the reasons why you embody real wisdom, because I see all the time, we talk and I'm always getting stuff from you, is because when you pursue truth and then you go through life, you have your ups and downs and you learn from it and you acknowledge it, then it grows into insight. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that you share with our people, especially our youth, that they get this insight. And I often see you with topics and I'm saying, where's he going to go with this? And then all of a sudden you come out with something unique and original. And that's your brilliance, but it also comes from your humility, because you're involved in service, and then that service, you're doing something bigger than yourself and you pipe into something higher, and then you're a spirit person. So if there had been a topic today on sacred science, you obviously can deliver on that, because that's the soul of you. You know what I mean? You got the spirit of things. If you don't like something, you say, my spirit don't like that. And if you're talking about a person, you're like my wife. You're always right. And then she'll tell me later, I told you. I told you that person was no good. I've been telling you, you know what I mean? But James operates on this feeling, this spirit, and its integrity. So those are things that I like most about you, is your care and love for your people. And then I know your family, your wife, and then all the beautiful grandchildren and children that you brought into the world. And then on a daily basis, they're picking your wife up from work. You know what I mean? seeing that, you know, she gets home, and boom, you take her to work.
Yep, I drive 4 hours a day.
Yes. You know what I mean?
I don't want her at her age walking in those subways up and down stairs. And sometimes she tried to stop me from doing it, but that's a part of my responsibility. We've grown in age together. When I met her, she was 17. So we've been together ever since then. And I remember I promised her father, one thing he just told me that day when he agreed that I could marry his 18-year-old daughter, he just said, take care of her. Mm-hmm. That's all he had. You take care of her. So I've been trying to take care of her, and she's taking care of me as well.
She has, in many ways.
She's sometimes the African king as well as the African queen. And I ain't got no problem with having a good king as a woman. I want my woman to be powerful and strong and with integrity on all levels, you know. And I'm not afraid of a strong Black woman because I came out of the womb of a warrior woman. I was raised by her mama, a warrior woman, and a root woman on top of it. That my foundation has been the strength of the Black woman. I have in my character, one of the most powerful part of me is my feminine part, you know, and it always protects me and guides me. And anyone that don't appreciate it means they're malnourished spiritually. They don't understand how the universe works. Right. And they're not reading the hieroglyph right if you don't see the duality as an equality that creates the whole, you know, because it's right there in front of our faces.
Right.
All the time.
And the proof of the pie is that in marrying a strong woman, you encouraged her to pursue her dreams, which is to be a medical doctor, and put her through medical school. And
I became Mr. Mom for almost 18 years, but I loved it, you know. And I see those babies, all of them showed up here yesterday except the two that was away, but they called with the children. The other one called crying, I can't be there to cook for you this week. But they're my babies, even in their 50s and 40s. And I enjoyed the opportunity to help to rear them with a woman that carried her weight even when she was in medical school. She still come home dragging and cooking. My cooking wasn't the best in the world, you know what I'm saying? So she would make some good meals back in those days. The key thing for brothers and sisters to understand, it is the family, the Black family is the foundation of civilization. It is the Black family structure that gives us our primary ideological understanding of how to formulate the politics of a community, you know? And we're kind of dropping that. We're getting caught in another person saying, oh, male, 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 female, female, female. No, neither exists without the family.
Right.
You know? Right. And so in the African culture, that family is everything. That's why we didn't have prisons. And when people did an infraction, committed a crime, you know, I heard the discussion around Dahomey. Most people who couldn't spell Dahomey before the movie became experts on Dahomey by the next morning. And I go, well, that's really strange. But they need to really study the history of African peoples, and you will find we had a servitude system, but we never had a slavery system. And our servitude system was predicated on harmony and balance being maintained in the community. And Jomo Kenyatta wrote in Facing Mankinya, when in this one chapter when it was talking about the I forgot what it is, the age grouping, and a young man or anyone, but he was talking about a young man in this case, committed a crime in a dispute. He killed another young man. There was a trial by the community elders. And the young man's sentence was not to death, not to prison, but that you will now fulfill the role of that son you killed in that family while maintaining the role of the son you got to be in your family. That's a humanity no European society has ever risen to. Right. And if you call that slavery, you're out of your mind. Because you don't understand humanity, godliness at the level of African culture. And that's why we got to study deep. So I've been, since that movie came out, I've been digging deep into the great Mali kingdom, the great Songhai, Ghana, because I want to know, when did this awful thing hit us? And it came via the Turks and the Kurds. Yeah, you think they're Arabs, but these are not Arabs. These are people who took over the Islamic system in the 7th century and invaded Africa at every corner and set up a chattel slavery system before 1492. When we think of the great Sundiata, we talk about Sundiata, but we don't know that he was assassinated by Arab Muslim clergy. Study history, it'll erase the mystery. And we won't be confused about who our ancestors was and who the imitators in our society is.
Yeah, because Sundiata or Sundiata, again, this union of masculine and feminine, Sun, son of Lion King, Jata, son of Buffalo Woman, a hunchback woman, ugly as ugly can be. And the father was told, the husband, that he, by prophecy, would marry her and then give birth to a king among kings, greater than Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
birth to
you know the story.
And he was not, he's been portrayed as a Muslim. He was a traditionalist.
He was not.
He was a traditionalist. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that's true. And, you know, this whole thing of African civilization is based on a balance of male and female. And that's been key. And then that's key to a sharing society. Then you know, extremes of wealth, extremely rich and extremely poor. And therefore you didn't have murder, you didn't have robbery, you didn't have female prostitution, you know, you didn't have homelessness, you didn't have any of this. And so some of us who want to correct the world now, we want to use Marx as the paradigm. And I don't knock people who do that, because if that's all they know, that's better than this capitalist thing. But why would you go back to something that has never been practiced before? That was Marx's idea. He never studied the societies that worked. He never studied African societies, and only learned about Native American societies through people he consulted with. And so why would you go to a theory with no practice when you have 200,000 years of sharing? Why wouldn't you go to your own system? That's another thing that I like about you, James, is you share, you know, but that's our people. I mean, we couldn't practice communalism in this country where the land, air, and water, particularly land and water, couldn't just be shared. It had to be sold, but we shared. You know what I mean? Came out of slavery without a nickel or a quarter, and we would give away a quarter if someone else needed it. And that's how we survived as a people. And that's what you do. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was share a few memories with you. You and I are partners in struggle, brothers in struggle in Pan-Africanism. And so I want to share some things with the conference that occurred in Senegal in 2004, called by the African Union, sponsored by Gaddafi. He put up money, and the Nigerians, and the president of Senegal, President Wade. And we were brought in as African scholars. It was an African scholars conference to offer some advice as an exchange, because we had Africans from the UK, we had Africans from the US, we had Africans from other parts of the world, we had Africans from the continent. We had a lot of African ministers who attended, meaning high officials. So you and I and Dr. J and his beautiful wife, Wade Nobles, and others, Dr. Theophil Obenga and others attended this. So I wanted to just remind you, but share with the audience some of the experiences of this. Now, I want to say this with me. I'm not just a regular smiler. You know what I mean? I smile when it's genuine. I don't put on no fake smiles. You know what I mean? And if I'm around certain people, you won't see me smiling. You know what I mean? Now that's telling you something. So this first picture I want you to see, this is unconscious, because when you're in the presence of somebody you love, you just radiate this. So this picture here is of me and James Smalls at the reception for all the dignitaries to this conference was under a tent where Miriam Makeba performed. Wole Soyinka, the Nobel literature recipient for Nigeria, sat and chewed out. He was given the permission to chew out the African heads of state for their corruption. You know what I mean? And, you know, we enjoyed some great food. And Nelson Mandela was piped in and gave a presentation. So this is James and I. And I want you to see, because this picture says more than any words. Y'all see that?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
You got to send me a copy of that one over.
No. See there? Now you see that smile on my face?
That's what's up.
So that was a part of this banquet. And by the way, the food was good.
Oh, that environment was an excellent environment to be with your people from every single corner of Africa, trying to discuss how we solve the contradictions we were faced with around the African world. And
we actually brought forward motions to the African Union. I was the only African outside of Africa to chair a plenary. And I was wondering why they flew me in first class. And Obenga and apparently the ambassador from Senegal to South Africa knew me. He had attended my organization, Pan-African People's Organization, read my books. And you know, while I was sitting in the banquet, I'm looking at him. And he says, yeah, you remember me. And then he introduced himself. So 10 minutes before I'm chairing it, they're telling me I'm chairing it. Typical of how African people work.
You chaired it fantastically, you know, because that's what you do. That's what you do with the wisdom and knowledge you have, sir.
And then we had to deal with the elitism of the African Union. That's a whole nother story. So then again, this is the banquet. And, you know, these are sisters. Can you all see that?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
They were from Botswana, right?
Yeah.
Yes. They were teachers, political leadership from Botswana.
Yeah.
We were absolutely in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be able to stand beside those goddesses.
You better believe it. You better believe it. And then this is a sister here who is a designer. Remember that one?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful young lady, probably in her early 20s. Clothing designer, fashion designer.
Well, I'm glad you got all those pictures. Had I brought those pictures home, I may be in California living with you right now.
Okay. Now, Dr. J and his wife got in late, so they missed the banquet. So I saw them at the hotel. Now you see another look on my face, which is going to tell you what I think of Dr. J. You see that?
That's funny.
Who lives in Africa along with his wife. You know what I mean? And then his lovely wife. There.
Dr.
Rosalind Jeffries. And I gave her a copy of the Integration Trap book that night, and she read it because she's in the book, you know, but she didn't read it for that reason. And then this is me and Dr. Nobles. I can tell you, I'm not going to, but I can tell you exactly what we were talking about. This is before a major plenary. See there? And then this is the head of the African Union. And I'm presenting him with a copy of the Integration Trap. It's the head of the African Union. The African Union is the organization of African states, and then some liberation groups could observe, and now they have a way for us to also be represented in this. And then this is the president of Senegal, and again, the head of the African Union, and I'm clarifying with him that my plenary is going to go on because they took my plenary, and I'll make sure it wasn't going to be stopped. So this was a little conversation there. President Wad, and President Wad believed in Pan-Africanism, not just of English-speaking of Africans, but Africans of all languages, and quite a conscious and beautiful brother. And this is one and this is also another one. This is me chairing the plenary, and that's a young South African woman who's my secretary, gave me nothing but a headache. because she didn't like what I was doing. You know what I mean? And that was just tough because they wanted me to go a certain way. It didn't go that way, you know. And this was a chairing by consensus. So, and this is something, when you've been on my show, you've seen this, but I don't think you know what this is. The reason that I chaired that plenary is I chaired the 6th Pan-African Congress Political Committee for North America. That's the largest meeting of Africans anywhere around Pan-Africanism. Africans all over the world assembled, and that's me with the natural. And the brother whose face you can't see, that's Amiri Baraka. And then on the other side is Owusu Sadakawa, who had been chair of the African Liberation Support Committee, was not then chair, but had been before. And that's the group that supported African liberation around the country. And that was a debate between the three of us on Pan-Africanism or Marxism. I thought that Baraka was on my side, but he had just flipped to Maoism. And so I'm sandwiched in between the two of them. And so guess who won that debate? So what I wanted to say is that James and I have been both involved in the Pan-African liberation movement. That's our big thing. And we're trying to get across to young people the fact that the freedom of African people is indivisible. You can't be free in one part of the world and African people are down in another part. Absolutely. And that's our legacy. We gave birth to Pan-Africanism, which means one Africa or all Africans united, both in the unity of Africa and the unity of Africans around the world. We gave birth to that in enslavement and the blacks in Trinidad and the Caribbean in general. But that is, again, a legacy of our culture, and you embody it, and your good buddy, Dr. J, and his wife, Rosalind, and others that you work with. And this is the highest calling that we have, is the liberation of our people. And no freedom for one without the freedom of all. And I know you and Dr. J, I see he's just come on.
Yeah, he just popped in.
Ghana is your hangout. And I think that's Dr. Rosalind Jeffries there, who is one master scholar and great human being. And I love Rosalind. I love Dr. J. And you know, Rosalind, I love you. She's a sister.
Yes.
So what I just want to say is happy birthday, brother. And you are one of the special people that God has on this planet that's doing good work for our people. Great work. You hear me? Great work. And we love you for it. You hear me?
Thank you, Baba Oba. And we love you for your longevity, consistency, continuity, and struggle. Like my teacher, Dr. J and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries. A lot of people don't understand to have known. I've known Dr. J, it's been more than 50 years now. I know Dr. J longer than I've been married to Carol, and I'm married to Carol 51 years. To watch someone struggle for their people with the kind of consistency that the Jeffries have done, and in a partnership like none I have ever seen or ever known.
Right on.
And I think that partnership is the power. That's why I know the family is the foundation of civilization. That is African culture at its finest. They took me in like a son. Even though I could be the younger brother, they treated me like a son. Sometimes Dr. Jeffries can be hard. You know, he beat you over the head, and then he give you an embrace. And then he push you out there to do what he's taught you to do. Extraordinary teacher, extraordinary man, who I think is so unsung. If anyone should be raised up and held up, and the man who was at the foundation of ANASCAC, the man who was at the foundation of AHSA, the man who was at the foundation of the National Black Studies Movement, the man who was at every, radical political gathering from Black Panther Party to this party, all of his life. He never narrowed himself down to some little academic corner anywhere. He's been right in the center of the Black community, in the center of the Black struggle worldwide. And most people, they know his name, but they don't have a clue who this man is. I'm just glad that he's my big brother and my father. And I'm not abashed in any way to say That's my teacher. That's my father.
Right.
All the things y'all saying, Brother Small, do. If I had not met Leonard Jeffries, I would not be on this path. Yes, I came from a radical political place before we met, but I did not have the understanding of being African until I met Leonard Jeffries. That's where I gained that understanding of being African. And that redirected my politics, it redirected my intellect, it redirected my family. Every time I thought I was still upset with Carol that I didn't know whether I was going to stay married or not, he would say, James, then just sit down and give me that talking to, and then my head was all right again. He took care of us, those of us who was the students under him. He took care of us who were struggling in the community. He was one of the persons who was not afraid. He never let a PhD block him from stepping in the trenches with the young Black activists in our community across the country, in the Caribbean, on the continent of Africa. So this is your birthday because you gave birth to this aspect of my character, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. So I was wondering, where's Dr. J? I was, man, Felicia was going to be having a big fight when this is over if you weren't on here today. So yes. Welcome, Dr. Roslyn. Welcome, Dr. Leonard.
Just something before Leonard comes on. What James just did there is ingrained in us. It's a part of African tradition. And what is that? You acknowledge your masters. You know what I mean? And you acknowledge where your foundation comes from. And generally, when you're giving forward information, you're usually quoting them as sources. You know what I mean? And that's the respect that he's showing that we all should for those who take us to this higher level. And Leonard and Rosalind Jeffries have done that for you. But that's just ingrained in us to do that.
That's what's up. Yes. You know what, Dr. J, can you, is your microphone turned on? I hear you. Okay, they're getting it together over there. Okay.
Just unmute. All you have to do.
It's not muted though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to say shout out to Naja. She said something very nice about her dad earlier, and then she just posted this right here.
Yeah, that's my number 4 daughter.
Oh, okay. Right.
And my baby girl.
All right.
Sometimes she's like my auntie, my mother, and everything else besides just being a daughter. And I just want to say shout out to my nephew, my eldest sister daughter, Pat both, and I just saw Pat.
Oh yes, she was on earlier. I mean, I saw she was commenting earlier. Okay, they're connected. They'll come back. The Jeffries will come back.
All right, since we're gonna wait for them to come back, I just want to say a couple words, Professor Smalls. First, one, say happy birthday, happy solar return, Professor Small.
Thank you, Oba T'Shaka.
Thank you so much. As the elders were talking, Dr. T'Shaka said some very interesting things, and one of the things that he mentioned was insight to the youth. And when I heard that, it resonated with me in a way, and all that we do here, we are a resonation of you and Dr. J, of course. A lot of just what we do here at HAPI, I see you as being the foundation, along with Dr. J and others of that. Definitely want to give a special shout out to you for that. Just your love and your tenacity for Black people, and just your love and tenacity that you have for me. And it's a very endearing love that, we've had the opportunity to grow this out and share this with a large extension of our family. One of the other things on that note is family. You mentioned the African family. And I can say, honestly, as these brothers were talking, I can say from a personal perspective that they're not just talk. And I experienced this firsthand. And this is another reason of how we got to where we are. So definitely with love and respect, want to say thank you and continue many more solar returns for you.
Thank you, Oba T'Shaka, who's like, he's a true son. I beat him up. I picked him up. I've learned from him, and I've tried my best to stand beside him in his pursuit to carry the freedom message for our people. And anyone, it doesn't matter your age, and it doesn't matter the age of the soldier that's fighting, it is your responsibility to stand beside and fight for that soldier, male or female, no matter how young they are, or how old you are. You got to fight to support those who fight for the freedom cause of African people. And so I love you, Brother Taaqiy, because you are a freedom fighter. And you make that clear. So I hope people understand, because I know a lot of people be wondering, but they don't have to wonder about me, because I'll be telling the truth about myself. And I make mistakes like everybody else. We all, like Oba T'Shaka said, we're trying to grow. And when we make mistakes, we go back and we try to repair, and then learn from the mistake and the nature of the repair and continue forward. So I love you, because you have been, from the time I met you, you have been on point about presenting a body of knowledge to our people, about our people, to enhance their growth. Because the people who do not know themselves can't defend themselves. You don't know yourself, you can't even fight for yourself. So
I say. So I also want to follow up with a question that I had. Brothers were talking a minute ago about Sundiata, and I just want to make sure that everyone we can get that some contextualization so people kind of understand what we're talking about, what time period, because some powerful information was mentioned, and I'm not sure everyone in the audience really kind of follow who you're talking about, when and where.
Right.
So can we just kind of go through that somewhat?
Right. We're talking about, and then Oba can pick it up. We're talking about the great empires, the empire of Ghana. We talk about 9th century, 7th century, right through to the 15th century, Ghana, Mali, Songhai. These are mighty, what we call Western Sudanic empires that covered most of what we now call West Africa. These were African indigenous empire. The leadership, in some cases, when we get to Mali, would Islamize, but not the population. And they were Islamized for the purpose of doing trade and intergovernmental business. But we got betrayed by the Turkish, Kurdish, Islamic world, because we don't understand what is now called today's religion used to be yesterday's political economic ideology. Make that clear. So you all want to get mad with me, get mad with Al-Hajj, Amin, Shahid, credentialized as the Rabat, Alim, Al-Muslimin. So what we're now calling religion, and the same goes for Christianity. They were first state ideologies. Okay. And when it encroached upon the African kingdoms in the 8th century, 9th century, 10th century, 11th century, 12th century, 13th, 14th, 15th century, that's the period we're talking about. It came in a subversive manner as a trading partner. And then it used its ideology to use mass influence against the indigenous way of life of our people. And they tried to do that by capturing the leadership into their jurisprudence, which the world now calls Sharia, as being the modus operandi for the states they found in place when they got there. And in that conflict, we saw the murder of not only Sundiata, but there were other leaders. And when you study the history, you see those who were declared the highest level of clergy was involved in that process of assassinating traditional African leaders. And so that's why I love what Wade said. Study your history, you'll get rid of the mystery.
So also, Mali goes back to about 1,400 years ago in its beginning. And prior to that, you had Ghana, and then you had Mali, Songhai, and you had other civilizations.
Goa, but there's another big one that precedes Ghana, the Goa.
Yeah. these were big civilizations, and they were actually stronger militarily than the European ones at that time, and maintained largely by citizens' militias for a long time, and then by armies. And it's when Islam comes in, the Almoravids and others, and attacks these, that they begin to weaken the major defense that Africans would have had when the Westerners come in for the slave trade that they come in with later. So this is a weakening process. But in the case of Sundiata, he was born a cripple and couldn't walk, and for a long time crawled around until his mother told him at one point, "You're an insult. You know, you're supposed to be a great man. It's been prophesied that you're going to lead a great nation." And so one day he gets a stake, and he's got an advisor who stays with him for a long time and pulls himself up and begins to walk. And then he becomes the greatest horse rider. He becomes the greatest warrior and a man of nobility. His mother has to take him away from Mali because they're going to kill him, because they see that he could become the leader of the country. And then there's a man named Samanguru who takes over, and he's an oppressive African, vicious African. Sundiata's sister marries him for the purpose of discovering his power, because see, this is again proof that Sundiata was not a Muslim. He was a traditionalist, and he was into spirit power, because when they first fought their first battle, because he spends time in Ghana when the Ghanaian Empire had really collapsed, declined. It was no longer the great empire it was, but it was still there. And so he is aligned with the king of Ghana, and the king of Ghana has to let him go. He doesn't want to, because he could see he could be his successor. He's advised, you don't let him go, he'll be your enemy. But if you let him go, he'll be your ally. So then he leads an army to defeat Samanguru. But in the first battle, Samanguru disappears. It's magic. And so this is telling you, this is an African story. This is not your traditional Islam, because Sundiata is often pictured as a Muslim. He was not. And so his sister, in sleeping with Samanguru, who's a cruel man, discovers his special protective spirit. And once she discovers that spirit, she gives it to Sundiata. And in the next battle, it's Samanguru who disappears. And then Sundiata ends up ruling this empire, and a great man, and for a fairly long time builds up this civilization. So this is one of many civilizations that African people built, and that, we carried those principles throughout the diaspora. Now, the final point I would make is this: be clear about this. West Africans especially were very good at, even when they took on Islam, maintaining their own traditional culture.
To this day.
It superseded Islam. And one of the best proofs of that is the African woman in the so-called West African Islamic cultures is always powerful. Mali, for an example, great Arab historian goes to Mali at its peak and observes the African woman. And what does he say about the African woman? See, because under Islam, with the Arabs and the Turks, they got them covered up, hidden in a house, because they can't trust their own men because they're likely to abuse them. But this African woman is supreme in power. So one of the Arab historians gives this account where he's coming in and he is with one of the leaders of the Mali Empire. And when he comes into his house, she's entertaining her boyfriend. Now, she's married. She's entertaining her boyfriend. And then the Arab observer observes that these African women of Mali were the finest women he had ever seen in his life. But he didn't like the fact that in Mali, which is supposed to be Muslim, the woman had a higher rank than the man. You understand? Because they took on Islam on their own terms. And that's the very thing that Sheikh Anta Diop came out of. You know what I mean? And that's why he also had this strong intuitive thing and this great humanistic thing, because it was an African thing going there. You know what I mean? So this is another thing to get straight. African culture subverted whatever came along, and you had to pass on the culture in the African way. So any of these Arabs that wanted to get anything going, they had to become Africanized, and the whole educational system and everything else. So that's another thing to really get straight. Africa first. You hear me?
Africa first. So we got Dr. J and Mama J in the house. Before we get to them, I do have one more question for you. You mentioned Sundiata, Islam, and Guru. What do they fall in terms of chronology in Mali? Was it before, like Mansa Musa, around the time of Abu Bakr?
Ghana, Mali, Songhay. Sundiata is the first among the Malian rulers. So there are other Malian rulers who come after him. So Mansa Musa comes after, but Sundiata is the first. Yeah.
Sundiata is the first. Okay. All right. Hotep, Dr. J, Mama J, how you feeling today?
Oh, the mic. Something's going on with the mic. Yeah, we can't hear you, Dr. J. We can't hear you guys.
All right. Well, as we work out that technical difficulty.
Oh, wait. No, they unmuted, but we still can't hear them.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, while we're doing that, family, please like and share the video. These conversations always have a spirit of their own. It's definitely a powerful discussion. Please like, share, comment. We definitely want to do that. It's also Professor Small's birthdays. People want to show him love. We're going to put up his information.
No, couldn't make it. So Dr. Send a message. Tell Dr. Jeffries the microphone.
All right. So we'll put his Cash App up in a minute. We'll get that up there so everyone can kind of see that. Definitely want to show Professor Small some love. Send him the Cash App. Be very appreciative. So you said Sundiata, Sundiata, who was the first of the Malian kings, and Abu Bakr and Mansa Musa, those people, they come after. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
and remember now, the critical leadership is practicing Islam, but they're still practicing their indigeneity. Don't lose that. You see?
Right.
And the masses was not practicing Islam, but the Islamic community, who these people were trading, the leaders are trading with and visiting when they go to Egypt and to Mecca, are sending clergies and teachers because they observe certain things, their university structure. But Timbuktu is not, it's not begun under the Islamic tradition. The literature that they're finding now, and in the last few years, and I was reading a book it's called African Dominion that I've been reading lately by a man named Gomez, Michael Gomez. It's a nice piece of literature that people should get. It's called African Dominion by Michael Gomez, and he's trying to treat this period and does a very good job actually on it. I was looking at a couple of other pieces. Some of the works are not very good because many of them are Jewish, racist. They do not want to speak the story of the great African kingdom. They got to speak it and say it exists, but then they come with all of this convoluted stuff. But I think Gomez doing an excellent job in just being very technical and scholarly and breaking down what existed at that time. And even when you study the work of Ibn Khaldun, I've been reading Ibn Khaldun since I'm 20 years old. Ibn Battuta, these are great Arab scholars that's writing at that time. Both of them, in their own essence, are fundamentally racist, but they're reporting very technically on what is going on in these African kingdoms at the time, so that their works are very valuable to be read.
Right. So I think
there's a note here from an adept Mali people talking about the Dogon as a part of Mali, and that's true. The Dogon left Mali 1,400 years ago because they did not want to undergo conversion to Islam. So this is another example of how the culture persisted. the Bambara people are Malian people. And some of them converted to Islam, but only nominally, because they end up with the same mastery system. So what you're seeing is even under the Malian Empire, you've got different groupings of African people, some of whom fiercely are resisting Islam and are moving out under the direct control, not to be under the direct control of Islam in Mali, forming their own societies. So that's
even the people we know today as the Igbo of Nigeria was fleeing Islam for quite a few centuries before they ended up settling into what is now Nigeria. That's why this history of West Africa. Dr. Jeffries had a friend, Akinjobin, I think his name, Professor Akinjobin. Yeah, Professor I. Akinjobin, who was teaching us at City College. And Dr. Jeffries introduced us to West African civilization through Professor Akinjobin and his history, fantastic history of West Africa.
Professor Smalls, I just want you to hold that thought. I think Dr. J, he's ready. Him and Mama J is ready. They want to say a couple words. I think Felicia actually has them on the phone.
Yeah, hold on. And also, Professor Small, need your Cash App.
Okay, I'll text it to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, sir. All right. Okay. Dr. Jeffries, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys can you guys hear them? You guys
it's too much feedback, Felicia. It's feeding back to the mic. So
yeah.
Yeah, you can go troubleshoot with them.
Okay.
We're going to keep the discussion going. So there's a couple things. I'm sorry, Professor Smalls. You was go ahead. You was speaking. You can continue. Then I have a few other questions after that.
What was I saying at the last time? I'm getting old too, you know.
You was talking about
years old.
You was talking about the professor that Dr. J introduced you guys to at City College.
Professor Akinjobin. But Dr. Jeffries introduced us to West Africa. In the classroom, he brought all of these scholars, Yoruba scholars, Igbo scholars, Ghanaian scholars, West African scholars that most departments in this country didn't have access to. But he was able to give us access to these men. He brought in Niangora Bura from Ivory Coast, extraordinary writer, extraordinary literature that he's left us, and most of us don't know his name. But Leonard Jeffries was such a giant. He was able to bring these men to America in a classroom at City College and seat them in front of us as students. I just thought when you think of that today, that was an extraordinary thing, because I began to learn to love African culture and see that history and culture and politics, a term that people hear me say all the time, but I got that from Leonard Jeffries. Economic politics and culture. We got that beat in our heads every day. Economic politics and culture. And I remember in Gotham's Hall one day, he added the spirituality to economic politics and culture. And I go like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to go. So anytime you hear me speak, I'm talking about economic politics, culture, and African sacred science, the spirituality.
Yes.
His foundation, of what he taught us.
So, as everyone may know, that is the foundation for what we do. The teachers of Dr. Jeffries in the economics, politics, and culture, what he poetically calls a pyramid analysis, which gives us a real understanding. Using that formula, we can kind of really look at where we are, where we've gone, where we've been, where we're going. We can examine all the civilizations. It's just have a great understanding of who they are, but just using that one formula. We spoke earlier about the emergence of great West African civilizations. I'm going to talk about the economic foundation and just how significant was the trans-Saharan trade network in their development. So, Dr. T'Shaka, can you kind of elaborate on that, please?
You're referring to the trans-Saharan trade network coming from North Africa across the Sahara Desert into Africa, particularly West Africa. That's what you're referring to.
Yes.
So, for example, in the case of the civilization of Ghana, Ghana had a prosperous civilization and a decentralized one. And this is one of the things that African independence movements missed in understanding how communalism operated. And they thought that when they adopted African socialism, they were reproducing African communalism. But what they missed was that African communalism in Ghana and in other parts of Africa, the societies, the economics of the societies were largely run at the local level, at the village level. And the people determined the crops that were grown, and the people basically profited from them. Communalism is often seen as a sharing system where the land, air, and water is shared but not owned, and no one really owns property. When they would say the king of Ghana owned land, they simply meant that he had the right to redistribute it to various families in need, for example, but he didn't own it. So part of the economy then of Ghana, the key part, it rested on the economic empowerment of the people at the local level. So, for example, when Chancellor Williams goes to Africa in the 50s and writes his greatest work, The Rebirth of African Civilization, he mortgages his house and studies how these societies work. But he asked the people one question: what did they want when they became independent? What kind of society? They said they didn't want capitalism and they didn't want communism. They wanted cooperative democracy. And that was the same thing as African communalism. And what they meant by that is that they ran their local economies based on democratic decision-making, which I pointed out in the Mother Principles, based on the formula of all the males and females being equally empowered to govern every phase of society. So then they said to Nkrumah, before you make national decisions, come to us and consult us, and then go back and do your national business. So make sure that your decisions are rooted in what the people want. African independence leaders made the mistake of the national leaders making these decisions. And even when you had good national leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, they could make a lot of mistakes, and their parties were often corrupt, even though they were not. And so these things didn't work because they did not rely on their people. So going back to your trans-Saharan trade. So what happens is in North Africa, salt is being exchanged for gold in Ghana. And so you have these Arabs coming in from the north with their salt, and then they're exchanging for gold. Now, guess what? The king of Ghana didn't control the gold. He didn't know where the gold mines were. The people did. And so what happens is they had a system of dumb barter. They called it dumb barter. It doesn't mean dumb, D-U-M-B, but it was one where when transactions occurred, there was nobody present. And so what would happen is so much gold, so much salt would be left, and then the Ghanaians would lead so much gold, an appropriate amount for exchange. And so that's how the system went. And of course, the Ghanaians were hiding the source of gold so someone wouldn't come in and try and grab it. Now in Ghana, you have other people controlling the gold mines of Africa, in this case, Ghana, because our mines are under control. I remember asking a cab driver, why would you let other foreign companies come in and mine your gold? And he basically said he trusted them. Really? Huh? That's a colonial mentality. So in the case of this system of trade, the big nuggets of gold went to the king. The gold dust was in the hands of the people. So that's how that system of trade worked. And the key thing is the trade was in the hands of the people. These societies were controlling their own trade, whether it was among themselves or with Northern Africa, the trans-Saharan trade coming across the Sahara Desert. And that's something that we need to revisit today so that African societies can be connected and where their primary trade is with each other. And that requires, again, what Africa is trying to do through West African and other African federations where you're doing trade and you're not linked primarily to the colonial powers, which is the way trade relationships have worked since the colonial period.
Thank you for that. So when we think about something like Mansa Musa's Hajj, his pilgrimage to Mecca, it was always kind of explained that the that in a sense opened up the floodgates for a lot of the Arabs to come, seeing the riches that was in West Africa. But from what I'm hearing is that this Arabization, this Islamization already started taking place prior to that great expedition he made, to Mecca. Professor Smalls, I know this is like an area probably very dear to you. Can you give some context to that, please?
Yeah, remember, we talk about the Moors, the Almoravids, the Almoravids. These are Black people who live in North Africa. Now, remember, before the Islamic invasion into North Africa at the end of the 600 AD, beginning of the 7th, North Africa has been invaded by the Germans, the what do you call them? The help me, Oba T'Shaka, the German tribes who comes through Spain. But before the Germans invade North Africa, you had the Romans occupying for a couple of hundred years, and before that, you have the Greek. So you have a bastardization of the shoreline population by invaders going on for hundreds of years before we get the Arab Islamic invasion. The Arab Islamic invasion into Egypt and then into the rest of North Africa occurs, driving out the German population back into the Spain and France, and there's a population there that is already mulattoized and have loyalty to Roman Christianity and have loyalty to the Visigoths. Oh, somebody put it up. Thank you, Sister Carol. The Visigoths. This is a German invasion that comes in from Spain. We never talk about that period of our history in North Africa. So Islam comes in, and the Black folks appreciate this Islamic thing because it's given them an ally to throw the Roman remnants and the Visigoths off of their back. But this Islamic invasion is a very aggressive invasion, and it begins to attack the very African population who allied with them to remove the Romans and the Visigoths from power in North Africa. So we're talking about a couple of hundred years of warfare, and that's when the population that we now call the Moors is engaged, become Islamized. But not all North African Blacks become Islamized. Many of the people that live in what is now Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Morocco, these are the people that move southwards and end up forming the Mali Empire, the Ghana Empire, so forth, because they did not want to become a part of this new way of looking at life, this new worldview, this new ideology we call Islam. And so we got to look at that period before you even look at the Almoravid, the Almorahids, and then you see there's a war between the different groups who have even become Islamized. There's a group that's become Islamized, but want to remain as Africans. And there's a part of the group who's become Islamized and becoming culturally Yemeni and Arab. And there's wars going on for years between them. The indigenous population goes down to Chad, to what is Chad, Niger, Mali, and so forth, running away from that. But over the years, that blending will encroach upon the kingdoms that will become the Ghana, the Mali, the Songhai, to the south of them. It's a long history. You can't just do it in a 5-minute piece, but it's enough for people to understand. Before we have further conversations, we really need to study that history. And then you'll learn about the Gudamas, and you'll learn about the Garamantes. These are the great African ethnic nation that populated North Africa. Before, the West called them Berbers. They did not call themselves Berbers. They called themselves Gudamas, Garamantes. These were the big ethnic nations.
Now, key thing here is because the Visigoths and them in Spain, they have issues. And it's the issues that the Africans and the Arabs exploit. And so it's when King Roderick has his problems because there's been the abuse of one of these Europeans, Visigoths, his daughter had been abused. And so what he wants to do is get revenge. And so he lets it be known to the Arabs that the country's ripe for invasion. This is prior to 711 AD. And so the Arabs send an expedition because they really don't think this is possible, that they can take Spain. And the expedition comes back and tells them, yes, it's wide open. And so then they send an army of 10,000 Africans under who have been referred to as Berbers, which they were not, as Brother Smalls just noted, because this group has two groupings that are called Berbers. One is white, one is black. And if you look at Ivan van Sertima's work on African civilizations, he does some very good research on this particular point. It's the so-called black Berbers, 10,000 of them, who go in to take Spain. These Arabs don't think they can do it because they're greatly outnumbered, hugely outnumbered.
And let me hold that thought right there.
Professor Smalls, before y'all get into this, we got Dr. J. He's rating again, so I think we got him this time. And we're going to come back to the warfare piece because I have some questions for that. So just do me for everyone on the panel, just go ahead and mute your mics, and I'm going to try to bring them in now.
Taaqiy, we can't hear you.
Go ahead, Dr. J.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Wait, you get to unmic. Oh, okay. All right, we're just going to take it. Well, you know, while we're taking a short break, guys, make sure you're liking, sharing this video, and please hit Professor Small up for his birthday. If he was in Detroit, we would be doing the money dance, and Professor Small, you would do the money dance. We putting the money on you. So we're going to pretend like we in the D right now, and we're going to pin the money, but we're going to hit the Cash App for Professor Small. All right, and you know, show him, you know, show some love to him. All right. Go ahead.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Lorenzo Small. He was on the panel earlier, and the brother always, every happy talk shows us Cash App love. Definitely big shout out to the brother Lorenzo Small. I want to say thank you, Madasi, Dua. Thank you for that. Thank you for the love. So, brother Professor Smalls, you were speaking. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead. Everyone is muted.
Oh yeah, wait. Oh, let me
hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, there you go.
After the death of the Prophet Muhammad and the end of the 6th century, he has 5 successors that follow, and most of them are assassinated within a few years. So the movement gets taken over by a group of non-Arabs, really, called Umayyads. That is the mixture of Arabs. And now we're talking about the descendants of the Greeks. These are the Greeks' children from the Greek soldiers raping African women. Let's call it what it is, right? And then you've got the Romans who've been there carrying on plunder, rape, and genocide against us for a couple of 100 years. And we're calling their descendants, with the African mixture, Arabs. But this population loses control of Islam in less than 100 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad. And Islam is taken over by a group called the Umayyads and then the Abbas. When the Abbas takes over, it's a wrap. The Abbas are basically Kurds and Turks. And Islam never gets back into the hand of Arabs until after the First War, when the British put them in charge of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. So during the period we're talking about, we're really talking about Eastern European Kurd, Eastern European Slavs, Turks, and Kurds that's running the Islamic system. Do you understand? Because if you can confuse the Arab, then you could get caught up in a kind of family relationship that ain't real. That's not who's in charge of the system. And you get even more graphically with the Mamluk Turks that comes in as slaves of the Abbas and the Eastern Europeans, and then overthrow them. And this one leader, Salahuddin, who a lot of Black folks think is so famous and great, and we name our children after him, He was actually a Kurd and an Eastern European. He was not even an Arab. Okay. And so he would defeat the Christians and that whole story around the Crusades. But the point I'm making is that these people who are invading North Africa at this time, it starts with the Yemeni at the beginning of the invasion, was this the 1700s with Abu al-As. And you got a lot of the Black Muslim types from the Yemeni coming into North Africa. And we received them because we're trying to overthrow the Roman yoke. So we're looking for anybody that's going to help us out of this situation. And the Arab had a clear deal. They told the Black folks, listen, all you have to do is say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, become a Muslim, give us a certain amount of tribute and wheat and barley and gold every month, and we will not leave a sitting army on top of you. We'll move on. The Black folks said, that ain't too bad. And they're getting rid of the Romans too. Hell, I can go with that one. And there's a name for that contract that Abu al-As was using in North Africa that we bought into. But that was so soon changed when the Abbas drive forgot their name again, but drive them out of leadership. And so they move, the Arab leadership leaves what is called the Middle East completely and move into North Africa and leave all of that to the Abbas. All right. And that's the population that amalgamates politically and militarily with the Almoravids, the Black folks, the Gudamas, and the Garamantes to invade Spain. It's more complex than even that, but it's worth people doing the study so people can realize you can't just say the Moors, because that don't describe anything really at the end of the day. You got to know what the nuances in these relationships and who these people are. So we stop calling people brothers who have never been our brothers. Stop talking about religious relationship we've never really had. Even I made that mistake in my early ignorance because I was an imam for 11 years. I am a Hajj who went to Mecca, very credentialized Hajj, one of the few that went before the Rabat Alim al-Islamim. And so I made it Dr. Clark when I asked him, what is my place? He said, your place, master North Africa, master Islam into West Africa. And I've been trying to learn that. But it's a very complicated history, very complex history. And as Oba was showing you, even when we Islamized in North Africa, we did not abandon our indigenous worldview or practices. We created a fusion between the two out of necessity. And that still goes on today. You go to Ghana and you meet my priest, the brother I call when I need help, when I need interpretation, when I need power. Dr. Jeffries had met him. He's a Haji, an Islamic Haji, and he's an indigenous African priest, you know, and he can work a shrine better than any priest you know what I'm saying? So they did not abandon their ancestral worldview or their ancestral spiritual culture. Where they could fuse them, they fused them, and when they didn't, they operate as parallel systems in a partnership with one another. Well, that's going on in North Africa. So there's a constant war in North Africa between those who become Arabized, which is different from becoming Islamized, and those who become Islamized but never become Arabized. So the non-Arabized, Islamized African will be at war for a few hundred years in North Africa with the Arabized African, who is also Islamized. And we need to really study that and get a sense of it so we can know who the Garamantes were, who the Gudamas were, and watch their movement down into Chad, what is now Central African Republic, Niger, Mali, and Senegal, Gambia. Because that's much of that population came from there. The Mendi population was big in what is now Tunisia, Algeria, etc. But now we see them in Sierra Leone and Senegal and Mali.
Now the key thing here is with the invasion of the Moors in Spain, which is led by Tariq bin Ziyad, who's African, and his army is African. After a week, they win, and they rule Spain from the time of his victory, 711 AD to 1491. And the point is, during that time, it's the only place in Europe where there's any civilization. It's the only place. When it falls, what ends up happening is that's when you begin to get the movement of Europeans into the Americas, and under Christopher Columbus, and the Portuguese beginning to move into Africa. And so then that's the African presence. But the key point is that the very power of Europe largely comes out of this Moorish civilization, because it provides the keys for the Renaissance. And that's what really enables Europe to get itself back together, because after the fall of the Roman Empire, they were savage and barbaric. And it's really the civilization that Africans introduced. Now, there's a key point that ties into what Professor Smalls, I want to say this for the benefit of the audience, James, for me, says, is that when these brothers conquer Spain, again, showing the Arab input, they're stuck in the worst part of Spain, up in northern Spain. So they have to appeal to the highest orders of Islam to get this overturned, so that they can be in the southern part of Spain, which is the best part. And so even then, what you're seeing is the conflict between the African and the Arab. But the African plays a big part in this whole picture. This is a real key thing to study. But again, I want to say to the people who listen to this, hit some books. Do not expect a summary like this to be sufficient for you. Hit some books, read, you know what I mean? This is complex stuff.
Do you have any suggested reading material?
The overall best thing as an introduction, and it was the first book that I read, and it's not a African historian, it's Lost Cities of Africa by Basil Davidson. For a general overview, that's one of the best introductory pieces. And then there's all kinds of stuff on Ghana, Mali, Songhay. But there are many other civilizations, because we're often limiting the study of West Africa to those big three. There's a huge number of them. So there's all kinds of texts and stuff on that. You know?
The UNESCO History of Africa, 8 volumes, covers
I've got it right back here.
Very well. The book I mentioned earlier, Gomez's book, African Dominion, have a bibliography that will blow your mind. And when you read these texts, always, Dr. Clark taught me this, use the bibliography of the author to further your research, you know? I
want to talk a second about Basil Davis. Is it Basil Davis or David?
Davison. Yeah.
Davison. His name comes up as being someone from European descent who was, I guess, very impartial to African history. Why is that? Or is there any truth to that in terms of his explanations? He seemed to be like a non-racist individual and just kind of wanted to tell history for what it was.
Why, I can't explain. That's his orientation. But for example, he played a very important part in recording the armed struggle in Guinea-Bissau and supposedly Cape Verde, but it was Guinea-Bissau. So he did a good job of recording a lot of direct stuff on Amilcar Cabral, who was the greatest leader in the world in the 20th century. You can see him behind me, the person with the sunglasses on. And that was his specialty, which was ancient African history, but he tended to tie it together, so it was very good. I think that John Henry Clark's works on this is good, you know, particularly his large work on Africa. There's a huge amount of stuff on Ghana, Mali, and Songhay, and the UNESCO writings are important. Dr. Theophile Obenga's writings also cover this. Sheikh Anta Diop, he has some important works on West Africa. They're important. So there's a whole body of work.
Yeah. So this is what volume is this? Volume 2 of the UNESCO General History of Africa, dealing with ancient African civilization. And then, of course, I have Basil Davison and his Latin, but this is the last one. It's African Civilization Revisited. This is also good to read. And then there's one called The Last Great Muslim Empires, History of the Muslim World. So this is another good one that includes The Last Great Muslim Empire, and that's by Hans J. Kissling. But once you got the topic, pretty much, you know, you hit Google, it'll tell you who the author is there. And of course, The Golden Age of the Moors by Dr. Van Sertima is a very good book with a lot of data that will help you and timelining. Then there's the Wamana Empire by the Niger, Kingdom, Jihad, and Colonization. They're looking at the 1700s to 1920s, but it'll give you a good sense of what it all comes to, okay, by the 1700s, those great kingdoms. And then the last one is West Africa and Islam, you know. This one is by Peter Clark, West Africa and Islam. But again, all of these books come with bibliographies. Use the bibliography that these researchers use, and you'll expand your library considerably on the topic.
Thank you for sharing that.
There's an excellent text. It's an actual account of a jelly, which is a initiated African historian. The French call them griots. And it's an oral account of the history of Mali by the jelly Niane, Niane, and it's called Sundiata, an Epic of Ancient Mali. It's one of the two most eloquent accounts of history that I've read. Malcolm X on Afro-American history, because it's an oral account. And so it's very moving. It's a summary and it's brief. And this one, because the jelly is a master of eloquence, but he's initiated. So that means that he has to tell the truth. And so this is one of the most beautiful accounts of history you'll find. The most beautiful ones are the ones that come out of the oral tradition. So the books that Professor Smalls gave you on the UNESCO series, Volume 1, there's a chapter in there by Hampati Ba, Hampate, B.A. He was a traditionalist, trained in the French system, but trained in the African system. And this is one of the very best accounts of Bambara philosophy and history. And I want to say this, if you're going to study African history, you need to know African philosophy. And African philosophy is African spirit systems, not this European stuff that is despiritualized and, doesn't really deal with much. But this is the deep thought of Africa. And so Hampati Ba's work is one of the greatest. Dr. Jacob Carruthers had recommended that to me, and I found it as one of the most useful. And on my show that was on the Dr. Oba T'Shaka show yesterday, we covered African concepts of origin in terms of the laws of the cosmos and the powers that we have within. And we're looking at Bambara thought, and in terms of their account of how the world came into being, and Dogon thought. So it's very important to look at as much stuff as you can get from the traditional people. And that is almost always conveyed orally. And so when you see this, it's orality put into writing. And we've been taught to disrespect the oral history. Most of West Africa and East Africa was oral. And they had a system for maintaining a memory of the history better than the written systems very often, particularly that the Europeans have, because there's a high value for truth. And then there's a system for passing it on. People have these great memories. And so when anyone's given an account of history, there are other jellies, if it's in West Africa, in presence. And if they make an error, they're corrected in presence. And they can't make many and still hold that office. And African history is always genealogy. So it's always going back to family history. And so the African historians knows the genealogy of a civilization by memory. They can give you from the first family on up. You know what I mean? So these oral sources are extremely important.
Okay, let me show you some more books. There's the Slavery in the Arab World by Gordon. Okay, get that. Slavery in the Arab World is something that you can begin to familiarize yourself. The Moors of Spain, which is an important old book that's out here. But again, it'll give you a foundation, a real foundation. And then there's this one by Ralph Mannheim. It's called The History of the Maghreb. That area that we're calling the Sahara is referring to as the Maghreb. But Dr. Jeffries had a professor that Nyangora Buddha, who came to teach us at City College, lectured to us. And he wrote a book called Drumology. It's in French. But Buddha told us the story of the drum and how a youngster, you came from a family of drummers and you were chosen to be a successor for whomever that elder was when you were like 4 years old, 3 years old. And then you were taken into the forest and you picked a tree that you helped to raise and cultivate. Out of that tree, when you became a man, you would cut it to make your drum. And you met a monkey there that you made friends with as a baby. And you will follow that monkey and he will be your friends until you have to kill him to use his skin on the top of that drum. That may sound strange to people, but think of the relationship now between the three objects, the tree, the monkey, and the person to be the drummer. But what was the drumming all about? The drumming, and I remember when Dr. Jeffries first brought it to us, I go like, oh, hell, that's the tape recording of our history. Every note that's played by that griot on that drum was a part of the linguistic interpretation of the oral history of the people. And each drummer was obligated to learn a certain amount of years of that history. To change one note could cost you your life. That's how sacred the history of the people was. And if you think that's crazy, go to the Ashantis at a certain time of year. Well, they do it a lot of times, but at this particular times when they have a big Durbar, especially when the Golden Stool comes out, and you have the drums being played, the drum is actually speaking Twi, the language. The vibration of the drum is vibrating at the same level of rate of the vocal cord of the human being. So we may think it's just nice drumming. The Ashanti is hearing their language. Do you understand me? And so that language is committed to memory by the drummer and recorded into lyrics for posterity as a recording of the history of the people of that place. So you can understand what Oba T'Shaka was saying about the power of the oral tradition is deeper than you think.
And a key thing there, James, your point about the drum, the oral tradition prevailed in Egypt that gave birth to writing. The oral was always taking precedent over the writing. Why? Because the oral tradition, as he was explaining with the drum, which has vibration, is vibratory. And so it's the power that comes from speech, which in Kemet is Medu Neter, God's speech, and then Medu Nefer, good speech, the speech of human beings. So the power in writing always followed the power in speech. And what was the power in speech? It was the vibratory force of the truth. And this is something we don't really get fully, because let me give you an example of how serious this is. A Hogan among the Dogon is the repository of truth. He's the astrophysicist, the master of cosmic knowledge. And their knowledge of astrophysics is higher than the Kemetic one. Dr. Finch says so. I agree. And there's a lot of reasons why that's so. And it's the same thing with the Bambara and other people. So this is how important the vibratory force is. Among the Dogon, there's the story of a Hogan, because, well, I'll give you the story. A Hogan, to save a woman's life, has to lie. L-I-E. He had to lie. What happens to him? He has to give up his office. Why? Because by lying, he's destroyed the power within. And The Bambara have a saying, lying is a moral leprosy. Think about that. Leprosy is one of the worst diseases you want to have. So that, they're giving you the picture that for the Hogan, the priest, in the Bambara system as well, this high official, they are communing with ancestral spirits and ultimately God. They are healers in many cases. They have various kinds of powers. They are only good if they're pure spirits. And so this is also a part of this. So when you're getting history coming from an initiated jelly, that's a person who has gone through initiation for truth. And it's been years of training, 21 years in the Bambara system, from 21 to 42. They can't leave the village. They're undergoing initiation. And if they're going to be at the priestly level, as with the Hogan, then they have to maintain that. If they lose it, it's gone. So there's no such concept in the Western world. No such concept. You know what I mean? That somebody could be an embodiment of truth that's close to God. In the case of the Twa, they were like that for 150,000 years. They were all pretty much like that. And it's from the Twa that comes the name Masori, from which comes the term Ma'at. They lived it. They didn't just talk it, they walked it. And they didn't have no courts or anything, because basically they didn't depart from it. And that's a period of history we also haven't studied. So this is real key. So if you're going to get real history, what's your source? The African source, the initiated source, that's the best source. And in the case of Bambara, that's pretty well dead now, because their culture has been subsumed by Western culture. The Dogon's still holding on, but it's eroded. Places like Nigeria and Ghana, their priestly systems have been able to hold on to that. And so when you have good priests, because there are those that are not, but when you have the ones that are good, they also have to adhere to the truth, not to the same level of the Hogan among the Dogon, but to a very high level, because they're a repository of forces. They're giving you a reading or something, they're drawing on spirit forces. And if they violate certain principles, it will bring harm to them.
So Baba, my elder, just want to make not a correction, just an observation that with the Bambara, they didn't, yes, publicly and in overt public practice, we may have lost the institutional construct that allow us to carry on. But what Dr. Ben told us, the thing he called the craft, exists all over Africa. I was introduced to the craft not by Dr. Ben. I was introduced to the craft by Tumple Bye-Bye, president of Chad, who was an elder, the first president of Chad after revolution, after independence. And he was an elder in a tribe called the Sa-Ra. Listen to the name, a tribe called the Sa-Ra, which is one of the largest tribes in southwestern Chad, northeastern Cameroon, and I guess that would be southeastern Nigeria. And that society, because I did something for him, having a dream that talked about his assassination, which will happen a year after I told him about the dream of his assassination. And I offered to take his younger son, Francois, in America to safety. I was given the privilege to come in to the craft. And that's how we are still holding on to that order of reality and science you're describing in every nation in Africa, including Ghana. The craft exists. There were some people who thought to exterminate me in Ghana, and someone who was in the craft called me here, and Dr. Jan says, don't come to Ghana. Small, there's a problem we're hearing in the streets. But that person is my craft brother, and I'm using craft not to go any deeper than that the African is not even a society of secret. It is a secret society that maintains the integrity of our ancient science and wisdom. They still exist from one end of the continent to the other. And when I was sentenced to that execution in Ghana, and I was decided I'm going, my big brother Leonard Jeffrey said, well, I'm going with you. None of us had a gun, but he came with me. And we faced the demon, and it showed us the enemy and send them to the ancestry in traditional fashion, because there's a system in place that sticks to the tone of righteousness that you are talking about and will do their best to protect those they feel is trying to live and teach that behavior to others. Without going any deeper into that, I just wanted to say, as a member adopted into the Sarah, that we still exist.
That system was carried into the Americas, was carried into the U.S. Yeah. And it's basically the system that a John Henry Clark was trained under. John didn't know where it came from.
Right.
In fact, when I explained the book I'm finishing now on Seba, which is the term, because that's the Kemetic term for opening your inner door and whatnot, but it's describing the Dogon system and other African systems. John said that system's so complex. How are you going to be explain that? And I think he figured it out, because for the next 8 months, I interviewed him on the Masters in his life. And the last interview was in his home in 1998, when Leonard Jeffries, the night before, had me at a dinner with Marcus Garvey's son, who's going to be on a tour here in the U.S. next month. Remember that, Leonard? Nod your head if you can hear. And that was a beautiful experience. And it was Leonard that said, you know, Leonard's looking for a job. And that's when I called Wade, because he's acting chair for 1 year. I chair Black Studies for 12. I'm in charge of the hiring. And everybody telling me to hire somebody. I said, I don't see anybody worth hiring. And when I see that Obinga's getting ready, looking for a job, and he was at the ASCAT conference in 1998 in New York, then I'm in John Henry Clark's house. So I do the thing that you do. I didn't need to ask this, but I knew what his answer would be. I said, should we hire him? John said, of course, if he wants to. I called up Wade. I say, hey, Wade, Obinga's looking for a job. So I give him all the reasons why we should hire him. Wade says, I don't need no reasons. Let him get him out here. And then I had the best interview with John of all the interviews I had had for 8 months on the Masters in his life. So John was himself trained through this African apprenticeship system. And he said it was better than university because you didn't have to unlearn stuff. You heard me talk about my brainwashing. I had to basically throw it out. John didn't have to, you know what I mean? But the integral system in certain African systems haven't been maintained in its continuity. They need to be rebuilt.
Yes.
And those who are still holding on to it, you need to use it, because those are the systems that really serve the needs of African people. And those are the systems that will enable us to rebuild civilization wherever we are in the world, including here. That mastery system, that's what I ended up coming up under after I had to throw away this Western one. But I had to go through the Western miseducation one first. So it is this system that our people carried in here through secret societies. And
James, let me and I know sometimes the masters get a little angry with me, but I'm getting older now. I can say things. That body that we call Prince Hall, I belong to that body of Prince Hall Freemasons. They are not what you think it is. They are not the British baby.
Better believe it.
Okay? They walk at the highest level back into Kemet.
And it's the oldest, oldest institution that Blacks built in the United States. The oldest one. And why is it? It's total. And the main thing about its totality is the character of its members, and it's Kemetic to its core.
They get their genesis in terms of the foundation from the Irish-British Center. Right. But they've walked, and for those who need to hear this, they have walked back into Kemet at the highest level.
Right. Right. Because it was called the African Lodge before it was Prince Hall Freemasons. And
guess who named it Prince Hall Freemason? Richard Allen, who was a Prince Hall Freemason. After the death of Prince Hall, he thought it was an honorable thing to do at their next convention, and he made that proposal to name it after Prince Hall. The Richard Allen had founded the ME Church. Now, all of the lodges did not, the lodge in Boston retained to this day the name, the African Free Lodge. That's the mother lodge.
Yeah, secret societies is the most important institution other than the priestly system of divination and all of that, the hush harvers and stuff that we maintain in enslavement. You don't know about because it was secret. And that's not just true here. It's all over the Caribbean, South America, all over. And you know that because as soon as slavery is over, it's the secret society that's the most important institution that rebuilds everything. You know, businesses, insurance companies, all of this, and the Black church, you know, secret societies. Yeah. Why don't you know about it? Because it's secret. Guess what?
But the over tops was the Odd Fellows, the Knights of Pythias, the Daughters of Ruth, the Daughters of Isis, the Daughters of Tent, the Eastern Stars. And we know so little about these things.
Right.
And we really need to do some deeper studying. And again, to come back to the Woman King, before we attack, study Dahomey. Dahomey wasn't Benin. It was a small kingdom that fits within today's Benin. But study the history of the Oyo Empire. Study the history of the Islam encroachment on the Yoruba population in what is now northern Nigeria. So you would then realize that it's a little bit more complex. People are trying to survive something. They're fighting something. They're responding to something, you know? And it's not as simple as saying we sold each other into slavery. That's a ridiculous notion. Dr. Jeffries told us that years ago, and not to even take that posture. And so when you understand the complexity of what we were responding to, with the force encroaching on us from the east and the northeast, and encroaching on us from the west, and we are trying to survive in the midst of this with people who got a technology called guns, a technology we're just being introduced to and have no access to. And yet the warfare that we put up is so fierce. When we learn the history of our resistance against the tyranny and genocide of slavery, we will know nothing except love for our ancestry in the most profound ways, even in thought.
And our blacksmiths, our blacksmiths learned how to make guns. The problem is we didn't have the manufacturing component. But the key thing about secret societies is this. Kemet has Per-Ankh, House of Life, which is their highest university system. And by the way, I've set up a Per-Ankh, Amilcar Cabral, Ella Baker Leadership Training Academy that's based on that. We do training around this. So that was their university system. And it trained everything except warriors. Warriors were trained in the palace of the pharaoh. Now, but in that great university system, that's the highest in the world, came out of secret societies of Inter-Africa. Now, when the slave trade comes into Africa, those secret societies are called bush schools, and they're passing on traditional culture because they see the culture is now being challenged by the oppressor. Now, what do they do that the secret societies in Kemet didn't do? They train warriors. And so the key thing to get straight is that every African that came into the Americas usually was between 18 and 30. They were all trained as warriors. The men were, the women were trained in toughness, and you could die in initiation rites. Literally, it was spiritual death, but sometimes you could die physically. So when you see these Africans blowing away their slave masters during the Civil War, that's amazing to you. No, it's not. And see this post-traumatic slave syndrome and stuff, yeah, there's some of that, but these Africans were tougher than you think. And they were rough. And so as a result, They won the Civil War. You know what I mean?
Let me show you something.
That kind of tradition.
Yeah.
And, one other point.
Okay.
In slavery, there was a secret society called the Loyal League. Denmark Vesey was a part of the Loyal League, but particularly our greatest scholars were. Martin R. Delaney was a member of the Loyal League.
Mm-hmm.
Nat Turner was a member of the Loyal League. And when he dies in Jerusalem. Now, he was a Himbi Christian, but nominal. He was like Sundiata. He was really a spirit man. His stuff came from dreams and stuff, blood on the leaves and all this kind of stuff. But when he dies, the Loyal League says he's making a sacrifice. See, that's African stuff. You know what I mean? And he is providing an example for the liberation of our people. The Loyal Leagues were the spies during the Civil War. You hear me? So the secret society is some bad stuff. And if people want to figure out how, things should work, check that out. But you're not going to get it in normal historical accounts. And the best proof that they were operative in slavery is after slavery. That's the institution that comes forward and organizes almost everything.
So, Dr. T'Shaka, just quickly, because we do have a message from Dr. J. Sister Felicia is going to pass that on, but I just wanted to get the spelling for that terminology for you. said Loyal League.
Loyal League.
Loyal League.
There's a whole series of secret societies that have no affiliation with any of the lodges that we find later, and these are formed, many of them during enslavement, but after as well. And some of these are huge, 200,000 people right after slavery, and they're building up insurance companies with huge amounts of money. They come out of the African burial societies, and one of the biggest ones is in Arkansas. Got their own building and everything. And then, they're providing money for burial funds. But that was a part of something much bigger. So the view of slavery we have, it's wrong. You better go back and do your homework. Yeah? That blacks had, I get sick when I'm looking at YouTube and I'm seeing some cartoon of a black person having a Bible stuffed in his mouth. 98% of blacks were not Christians during slavery.
Oh.
You hear me? 98%. And Du Bois gives you the exact number. I don't know how he got the exact number, but it's just a couple of 100,000 before the end of slavery that were Christians. Blacks took on Christianity on their own terms. James and I, we had a discussion on my show. And so what the nationalist Afrocentric community, which is the hardest on Christianity, and most of them are not into Ifa, they're not into any African traditional religion, but they'll put down Christianity in a minute. They don't understand why the black church is different from the white church. And that's because we dropped voodoo into what we call Christianity. It was one of the smartest moves that any people who had nothing to rely on materially could do. We're the only people that subverted Christianity. The Irish tribe, we did it. And to this day, it's the core of the black church. And to my fellow warriors, you ain't built a movement 9 out of 10 times because you didn't know how to go in and deal with various groups, including the black church. And if you ain't organized in the black church, your butt is weak.
Right.
And don't forget who busted segregation in the South. It wasn't the black church, but it was people coming out of the black church, like King, like Fannie Lou Hamer, like a host of others. You hear me? Like the deacons who came out of the black church, which, by the way, it was sisters that told the brothers, I know this because I worked with the deacons. I carry a card from one of the leading deacons who was our representative in San Francisco, Congress of Racial Equality. His name was Ernest Thomas. His moniker was Chilly Willie, 6'2", muscular, always armed. And by the way, the sister that got me in the movement, I have her calling card because she had his card. And I just figured this out recently. When I'm in Mississippi on a floor waiting for the Klan to come, my girlfriend has just delivered me a .38 Smith & Wesson Bank of America pistol, and we're waiting for the Klan. I'm getting the history of the deacons At the same time, Chili Willie is in San Francisco meeting with our core chapter. So the point is, these were people coming out of the black church. You hear me? Black church supposed to be Mickey Mouse, huh? Guess what? The FBI never penetrated the deacons. Huh? Figure that one out. Because they didn't talk their stuff on the phone. They weren't up there gossiping. They weren't up there pulling street stuff, having stick-ups and all the rest of the stuff. They weren't doing stupid stuff. So when they came to town, the Klan ran. The Klan ran. Why? They coming out of black church, baby. They deacons in the church. You hear me? And the sister said, pick up a gun and defend us. And the brothers did it. So Forrest Whitaker's film on the deacons is good, but it doesn't really give the full history of it, but it gives you the spirit of it. You hear me? So that's the African in you. You got African all around you and you're putting it down. The most beautiful stuff has come out of this culture. You know what I mean? Keeps your head alive. I know our sister here, she got to listen to some rhythm and blues. What is that? That's spiritual blues. What is that? That's voodoo, baby, in the music. That's what heals you. Those vibratory forces that picks you up and makes you feel good. And Rosalind knows that. She's a sister of the spirit. You know what I mean? Spirit sister. Isn't that right, Dr. J? Isn't that right? And I ain't a Christian, but I know it's African, baby. And the place I love to speak most is in the black church, especially if it's a holiness church, funkified church. I love that more than anything because that's the most African thing we got. And we own it. And yeah, we got messed up parts of it, but you got some stuff that is really strong. And our people were smart. They subverted Christianity. Most don't even know it today, but that's what they did. The Irish tried, we succeeded. Guess what? We dropped our whole culture in it. Guess what?
Now, Sister said she has a message from Dr. J.
Yes. All right. So, okay. Listen, this is my best interpretation of what they said. We have the microphone is, I tell you, this microphone thing is just not working, even on the phones, talking to them. So first of all, just thank you. Thank you, Dr. T'Shaka and Professor for this conversation. It's like, we didn't think we was getting all of this. That's what's up. Thank you. I think I'm mimicking what everyone is saying in the chat. But Dr. Rosalind Jeffries wanted to just talk about, she listed a whole bunch of places that you took her, all these places with, where women kings were, coming from, but also that, in her writing, because she's writing this massive, I just can't wait for this book to come out. And she talks about, the work that Ivan Van Sertima, did with the women kings, but she talked about how you took her to the Benin capital, all these places. Yep, she's right there, women in antiquity, right there. I don't know if, let me see if I can make that bigger for you. Wait, keep it up there. There you go. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so, but she just thanked you, Professor, for, just kind of taking her around. And Dr. J wanted to say that, all this talking that you guys are doing, this is why it's important that he's putting all together, all his books and papers, because he will be donating them to Morgan State. Shout out to HBCU Love right there. He's donating them to Morgan State. And so it's really, super important, just from hearing what you guys are saying, that that more people need to hear this information. And this is why, we have to, he has to donate and make sure that everyone gets it. Yes. And so one thing I was sitting here thinking is that we are going to absolutely have to get them back on sometime this week, so we can actually hear their voices. Yeah. We'll set that up so that we can continue the conversation with them. But
they're two of the most beautiful human beings
yes,
you will ever meet. When you talk about people walking with a God consciousness, the Jeffries, and I'm not saying this because they're my friends and mother and father, but they became the model for what you want to be and what you're looking for in other people. They truly have lived the African spiritual being role and how to do everything they do. Even when, and I know Sister J is being gracious, but Dr. J was our leader. We have an organization called Cultural Heritage African Tours. Dr. J and them made me the president because I was like the youngest dude, but it's Dr. Jeffrey's idea to do the tours in Africa and take us to Benin and to take us to Togo and to take us all around Ghana. So we learned about the airway, and we learned about my first trip in the West Africa was with him in an airway village, you know, in Togo. Yes, I was the one out there trying to make sure we get the bills paid and we do those other things and arguing with everybody to make sure things was right. But the Jeffries were the mother and father of those tours that we did. We got interrupted by COVID, but we will be coming back. And so we just want them to know we love them. And my birthday is their birthday because they gave birth to a significant part of my being. You know, we don't understand what parenting is confused with physical birth, but physical birth is not the totality of parenting. The very DNA of a person could be changed by the energy and the wisdom of another person. Do you understand? So you can become the son or the daughter of a wisdom, of a mind, of a spirit of another person because they choose to encounter and embed that in you. And that is as significant as the egg and the sperm itself in terms of what it carries. And I've learned that. And I wanted to bring up one other thing. There's a young lady. Her name is Ezeli Dontour. Ezeli Dontour is an attorney, a human rights attorney, Haitian. She was the attorney for President Aristide until the Americans tried to take her out in Haiti. But she's written a piece called The Day Days. And when she first presented this, what are they talking about? She has a group, a movement called the Free Haitian Movement. The Day Days, you know, the last major battle the French had against the army of Dahomey, and they slaughtered thousands of our sisters on the battlefield and captured some of them. But they never stopped training. Even today, there's still some elders that have survived because that went into a secret society also. But most of the women the French captured, they sold into Haiti. Well, those very women, when they became old, the Catholic Church created a lay society called the Day Days so that these women could help convert the younger women coming over as enslaved persons. The extraordinary thing about these women, and why this woman is writing this piece about them, would like to make it a movie, is that these Day Days, who ran this lay aspect of the Catholic Church in Haiti, the women they trained, one of them married Toussaint, one of them married Dessalines, one of them married Christophe, and 4 of them became generals or high officers in the Haitian army during the revolution.
Wow.
That's extraordinary. The same woman from Dahomey, the woman who raised Toussaint, was one of those so-called Amazon women from Dahomey. So that African spirit, even when you beat it in the ground and kill it and murder it like the French did and transform their sister and their daughters over here, that spirit did not die. It led a blow against the French like nothing they've ever experienced before or since. And it is a story that one day I hope gets told. But our history is so extraordinary. And here in African America, we don't have to call ourselves ADOS. We don't have to call ourselves foundational Black Americans. We just Africans. We just be. America is a geopolitical place. It's not a contradiction to say African American. We live in this geopolitical place. We pay taxes in the geopolitical place. We work in the geopolitical place. We follow the laws of the geopolitical place. So, okay, that's a modern day contemporary geopolitical definition when you're talking about citizenship. But our race comes first, the African. Not only our race, our culture, our worldview, our ancestral spiritual cell clusters. That's who we are. We don't have to change that for anybody or for any occasion. And we have to be strong in that. Someone said her name is Isolé Danto. Well, I have a bad pronunciation, Brother Shabazz. But Isolé Danto is my sister, my comrade, my friend. I will die for her any day of the week. And she will die for me any day of the week. But she is powerful. And the stories of the Day-Days must be told because it is a history. Those women were not the army of the homie. They were an aspect of the army. There were still brothers in that army, and many of those women were trained by the men. They started out as the palace guards, and they only stayed in that military posture for, I think, 8 years or 10 years, and they had to retire. They could stay no longer than that. And most of them end up getting married and had children. Many of them became a part of polygamous relationships, which was the order of the day in the culture at the time. And so we need to learn more about them, and not just as somebody swinging a sword, but these were the brain power of society. The women is the power, and they give to the men in Africa the authority, and we should never forget that. Men is not the power in Africa. We are the authority in Africa, and that authority derives from the woman who is the power in Africa. You know, and Hatshepsut was an African king. If you're the pharaoh, you're the king. So why does it seem like an anomaly when we say there's an African king? There's 5 or more African kings in Nigeria right now. My favorite goddaughter, no, I can't say my favorite because the other goddaughters, because, you know, I am a priest of Yoruba. I do have godchildren, even though I don't have a house, which I intend to establish now because I'm in disagreement with the kinds of house that's out here. But one of my goddaughters, who's also a priest of the Yoruba, is the daughter of Congo, and she's now the king of Congo. Not the queen of Congo. She's the queen of the Luba people of southeastern Congo. But she is the king of the whole of Congo. And that's Queen Diambi. And she's serving very well. Dr. Jeffries and I was invited to come to her inauguration, but the American intelligence apparatus blocked us from having the visa to go into Congo and sit at her ordination. So there's a lot we need to learn. There's a lot going on around us in the African world we're missing because we don't have the foundation, so we can't see stuff. If the foundation was clear, we can see stuff that others can't see.
Yeah, and you know, your point about this foundational American thing, a lot of our youth are being brainwashed by very clever propaganda.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but that platform that puts this out has a following of about 200,000.
Right.
And so they are exploiting breaks in the culture that have occurred since '68 among the youth, where some of them don't know anything about their roots or their heritage or anything else. And as a result, they're being taught that everything is here, that everything started in America.
Right.
And they're being taught that when it comes to reparations, we're the only ones, the African American, who's entitled to that. But what is the African American? The African American came from Africa.
The
African American came from the Caribbean. The African American came from South America. So you're going to say that had reparations been provided during Denmark Vesey's rebellion, he couldn't get it because he came from Haiti by way of the Caribbean, other parts of the Caribbean, winning his freedom by a lottery, by accident. You understand? So that the African in America is a mixture of the African world. And you shouldn't be ashamed of that. And the other thing is, you know, right now there's a campaign from people who have been brainwashed by this, and I'm not knocking those people. I'm knocking the people who brainwashed them. And the fact of the matter is, they're telling blacks not to vote. Not to vote. And this is the second post-Reconstruction. And in the first, they took the vote away from us completely in the South. What are they doing now? They're rigging it so that many states have passed restrictive laws. In Georgia alone, 30,000 black people have been stripped of the right to vote. And so Stacey Abrams, you know, they're trying to present it in the media like it's a close race, but she's going to lose. Well, it was stolen from her the last time, and it's being stolen from her right now. Because if you take 230 people out, 1,000 people out of the mix, then if you win, it's by a miracle, and you can win. And the way you win is all the people that haven't voted before, put your butts out and vote. And right now, 37% of Black people are voting in early turnout in Georgia, where only 29% were voting in early turnout during the presidential election in 2020. That's unusual because midterms, you don't get much of a turnout. So if you're running around giving some propaganda about not voting, and then there's a propaganda on the internet because one of the people that works with me, Brother Gawa, he's younger and he stays on top of this. And then my wife is the one been schooling me on this because she's from the Caribbean. You understand? And she didn't like this from the beginning. And they running around talking some junk about the Black freedom movement wasn't fighting for the vote. How stupid can you get? You hear me? Yeah, we're fighting for freedom. Why don't you say that? And the vote was one instrument. So are you going to aid in putting your people back on the plantation? Because in 1876, after that, the Higgs-Tilden Compromise, you were denied in the South the right to vote, period. And 40% of whites were denied the right to vote. That's generally not known. You understand? 40% of them became sharecroppers because of the disenfranchisement of Black people. You understand? So you're going to contribute to now not preventing us from voting absolutely, but having our vote stripped away from us. But now you're going to do it on your own. Huh? And then you're talking about you don't want Africans coming in here from other parts of the world. I don't hear you talking about Europeans not coming in here from other parts of the world. Why don't you talk that? And you're against Africans from Africa or from the Caribbean or South America getting reparations. You understand? That's your basic position. And you're telling your members to go to the Democrats and demand reparations. And if you can't get it, don't vote. But during the whole 4 years of Donald Trump, you never went to Trump once and demanded reparations. You hear me? Huh? You don't tell them that if you go to the Republicans and they aren't for reparations, don't vote. So I'm telling you, you knuckleheads out there, you are being brainwashed by some sophisticated propaganda. Think before you act. And don't be talking about voluntary disenfranchisement. The next thing you might be talking about is going back on the plantation. Give me a break. But I'm not knocking the people who are putting this out there. I'm knocking the clever ones who have pushed the propaganda. And by the way, Bannon loves these groups. He loves them. You hear me? And that is the brain of Trump. So you know where you're coming from? But I ain't knocking people who are doing this because you all are caught in traps, drug traps, breakdown of family traps, breakdown of community traps, prison trap. Some of y'all confused. You understand? So listen to some of this. And don't go for what I say. Don't go for what James Small says. Check it out for yourself. Do your homework. And go for what's in your people's interest. You hear me?
Thank you, brother, Dr. T'Shaka.
Thank you.
So, family, we're going to start winding the show down. I had a few more questions, but I see we're going to have to bring this back.
Yeah.
Happy talk session. A few things.
You know what, Taaqiy, I don't know what we thought of getting Dr. T'Shaka on here, Professor Small. I mean, really, this is a series with these two. Yeah, I was taking notes on all the things that they got to come back and talk about. So there it is.
Yes, I had quite a few questions, but we're going to save those questions for the next talk, and we'll definitely get Dr. Jeffries on another time as well. So before we close out, any last thoughts, Professor Small?
Well, again, appreciate you. You did fool me, and this is a beautiful birthday party. I was kind of tired, and I said, Felicia always coming when I'm tired to do something on spirituality. I said, I hope I could find some spirit tonight. But like say, Asa said that true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity. So I live that. I believe that 100%, 200%. I hope our young people who hear us, I will be at that conference in DC. They may not like what I have to say, but like I said, I'm coming in the house and having the conversation with the youth. You call me Baba, you call me Elder, and you have invited me. And I'm going to come and tell you where you're making mistakes and what the errors are. And I'm going to do that because I love you. And to me, that's revolutionary. I can handle myself. I'm old, but I'm not as old as you think. I'm not as unwise as you may think. I will be in DC. I will be at the conference. And I will tell the Africans there that you are Africans. You do not have to be intimidated about your identity. You do not have to be afraid to own your legacy. You know, you do not have to, because this amounts to hiding behind a tree while yelling out, I'm here. So I'm going there. They don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to say. I know one thing, the gods and the ancestors in me is going to tell them what is appropriate and what is inappropriate for the behavior of an African person, especially here where we are the amalgamation. You've heard me say it many times. We're the largest gene pool cluster of any group of Africans anywhere in the world, here in North America. You know, and we've folded that. You know, we come to the Caribbean and we created another kind of cluster, and then that cluster came to America and we created another kind of cluster. You know, so I can trace lineage. My great-grandpa, Joe Alston, was born in what is now Uganda. My great-grandma, his wife, was born in Sierra Leone. That's on one side. On my great-grandma's mother's side, she was what you call a Native American, but all Native American wasn't Asiatics. You know, I used to clean the mounds with my grandpa. We did that monthly, and then we had a big thing at the mounds every year. The mounds is the burial site of our people here. You can look at my face and see who I am. If you look at my children, if you look at my Maddie, my oldest, you're like, small, got that light-skinned little child. Her mother was a Native American woman from a little island called Sandy Island in the middle of the Waccamaw PD River. Okay. And then on the other side, I married a lady from Trinidad whose mother was an East Indian mixed with African American who had been taken from the South by the British because they fought with the British in the War of 1812. I might have even ended up marrying my cousin, even though I went all the way to Trinidad. So when we look at these amalgamations, you know, we got to just love ourselves, you know, understanding ourselves. And that's just a part of my tree. I didn't get to Grandpa Peter, Grandma Martha, great-grandpa Andrew, and that they all come out of a maroon community in Marion, South Carolina, between the borders of Marion, Horry County, and Georgetown County, which is one of the biggest maroon community in South Carolina that most people don't know about until I write my story.
Thank you. Dr. Oba T'Shaka, you got any final words?
Yeah, I saw somebody saying here, quoting Dr. Claude R. Anderson on, you should expect something from your vote. You should demand something from your vote. And in fact, when you get something, you should acknowledge it. Your vote the last time, well, you know, Black Lives Matter, Trump mishandling COVID-19, put him out of the White House into the doghouse. I have a show on this. It's my second show. You should go watch it. But the key point is, you put Trump out of the White House, and you got a Black woman on the Supreme Court. And of the choices they had, she was the best one. Now, the Supreme Court is one of the most backward institutions in the U.S. The most backward is corporate America, and then the Ku Klux Klan, the right wing, and all the rest of them. So the key point is, you should know how you wield power. We often act like we don't get nothing. We're always moaning and groaning. You know what I mean? You put a president out of the White House. His butt should be in jail right now. But at least you did that. That was based on power. Now, I just say that the key thing is to know yourself, respect yourself, and love yourself. And that's the key that is coming through all of this. And do your homework and get in an organization that's doing something for your people. This knowledge needs to be used. Ancient Africa is important, but I also want to stress this. You need to put as much time on studying your own culture and your own history here as you study on the culture and history of Africa. Because how can you apply your past greatness if you don't apply it to your present? And that means to enrich your own history and culture. So quit putting your own self down. Yeah, we got weaknesses. Identify them, work on them. But we're much stronger people than we give ourselves credit for. And I'll close on this one. The greatest weakness of Black people is we underestimate our strengths. And I'm going to tell you what our greatest strength is. I reached this point where I can do this. And by the way, I got challenged on my show. I'm telling Felicia that no one had challenged me up to now, but I guess when I put that out there, I got challenged, you know. So I said that every people have an ethos. That's the unique way you carry yourself in the world. I said the Kemites, it was Ma'at. The Yoruba, it's Ori. Don't think all Africans have the same exact ethos. We do in the sense that our culture is basically the same. We do in the sense that we're highly ethical people, so we're all Matan people. That is basically what our parents taught us. Now, the average Black woman would say, Nat, what? And then you say, truth, mama. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? So I say this, studying my people, because I put as much time on my people as I do Africa. And by the way, the African does the same thing. You understand? And each ethnic group puts the emphasis on their group first. They're supposed to. You know what I mean? So in looking at this whole thing of our ethos, I say this, based on the circumstances, not because we were any different from any other Africans brought anywhere else in the African world, in the Caribbean or South America, the one thing that was really different about our experience from the Caribbean experiences, this was becoming a successful settler colony. They were successfully wiping out the indigenous people, and they were becoming the dominant group. Whereas in the Caribbean, Africans were the numerically large group. 97% in most islands, African culture was dropped there, according to Eric Williams. It was dropped there. You know what I mean? So here we had to fight to recreate and continue our culture. I call it a new African culture based on fundamental African principles with some new ones and then some brainwashing that we have to deal with. And the new ones especially were race consciousness and Pan-Africanism. There were others as well. But here's the key point. And I've had some of the most brainwashed Africans tell me this, some on my faculty. Nearly had a heart attack when they told me this, because I already know this. You should know this. The world knows this. You hear me? The ethos of the African American is creativity, because we had to be creative to survive as a people. Felicia is a perfect example of that. You see how creative she gets with the show? You know what I mean? She angles it and we'll come in. Oh, by the way, that, by the way, is jazz. You know what I mean? You see what's happening with this show right now? It's an expression of that. Oh, we start off, James and I were not too smart to start a discussion of history. Then we get all the probing. That's your creativity. Martin Luther King said they were able to defeat Southern apartheid because they were creative. He said it matter of fact like it was nothing, because we often take this for granted. And I assert this. We're the most creative Africans in the world. That ain't knocking any other Africans. They're all creative. And sometimes they be more creative than us. But the fact is, we ended segregation before South Africa with less power. And we helped them. You hear me? With theirs. They won their own. And the proof of the pie is in the eating, baby. The whole world realizes this. You got the culture of popular choice of the world. And some of us running around saying we don't have a culture. Huh? You got the most complex one. You hear me? You produced the greatest scientists of the 20th century. You produced more inventions right after slavery than you could count among any other people. This telescope that's up there in space right now, the main lens was invented by a brother. The person who managed that whole thing was a brother. You hear me? Huh? The people doing mathematical calculations in NASA, you saw the film on it, sisters whose brains were better than a computer. You hear me? Huh? And I'm not knocking any other African people, because all African people have their strengths and all people have their strengths. And if you underestimate your enemy, they will outcreate and outdo you if you underestimate your strength. But your greatest strength is creativity. You hear me? And that's something to be extremely proud of. And I'm telling you, we have 10 ways to skin a cat. And with the change, America is in decline. I'm a revolutionary, by the way, revolutionary Afrocentrist. America is in decline. Now white people are saying there will no longer be a majority. See, when they're not a majority, there's no longer a majority. Guess what? Yes, there will be, and it won't be you.
Right.
Guess what? Who's going to lead that? Us.
And they're not a majority now.
Exactly. And guess what? Who's going to lead that? Us. And what's going to lead it? Our culture. You hear me? And so we need to be preparing our people to run things, run our communities, obviously run our families, run our institutions, but run the society with alliances and coalitions with others. But guess what? Your culture is going to drive this thing. So this is the key thing. And your culture is made up of African culture and new elements that we introduced here, suitable for this reality. So that's why I love all African people, but I love the muddy water people first. That's me. You understand? I'm not just talking about muddy waters in the blues. I'm talking about the muddy water people. That's my first love. When I go to Africa, I carry Aretha Franklin with me. Now, I love African music. I'm married to an African Caribbean woman. I love African Caribbean everything. Certainly love my wife. You know what I mean? Huh? But I'm just going to tell you, the blues people are special to me. Just as anyone from Nigeria is going to tell you that the Igbo, the Yoruba, they're supposed to say that. And that ain't putting down no other African people. That's all I got to say.
Listen, y'all need to follow him. Just go to YouTube and hit Dr. Type in Oba T'Shaka. Start following him. Hit the notifications button for Dr. Oba T'Shaka. His Saturday morning show is like a sermon. I'm just saying. We got a little taste tonight. So make sure you're following him.
And you all had quite a few people that subscribed based on my being on the last show. Quite a few. I want to thank you for that. That was very nice.
Thank you.
And we told them to watch your show. Not because you had me on. It's a good show. Y'all got a good spirit. Isn't that right, James?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm just wish we could have heard Dr. J tonight.
I know.
That begs for us to do a show that's centered just around the Jeffries.
Yeah.
Definitely. Say on these topics.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You know, speaking of shows, thank you. Listen, family, on Wednesday, we will have Queen of Four here, which will be really exciting. And on Sunday, we will have King Randall, the young brother who has opened up the school. He was just, he wasn't just about sitting around talking. He's like, let me open up the school for boys. So we're going to have him on Sunday and Queen of Four on Wednesday.
Right on.
Yep. All right. Taaqiy, you want to close us out?
No, give me 1 second, Fee.
Okay. So the other thing, family, is that we want to make sure that you guys are liking and sharing this video. This has been great. Look, this is not Professor Small. You know what? I would like to take credit for this, but I cannot. You know, between technology and all this stuff happening, this is why this show just ended up being so. This is like better than what we could have, thought about. Yeah, but I'm glad that you were surprised. That was the most important thing.
Well, somebody attacked my computer trying to come on, and then they attacked my phone. I mean, like, I turned to the telephone, then boom, they knocked my telephone. I go, like, what the hell?
Exactly.
They told me I didn't have any internet, and I got a big old thing downstairs. But once we quieted our spirit, it went away.
Yes. That's what's, yeah. And you know what? I tell you, you know, you got a good group of friends here. You guys are such beautiful elders. And yeah, Dr. T'Shaka, man, I tell you, I talk to you and I come up with a list of things and you sit up here and talk some more. We got a lot. You got a lot of information. We got to get this stuff out. And family, listen, Dr. T'Shaka got a bunch of books you can buy. So when you go to his YouTube, let me just break this down to you. When you go to YouTube and you put in Dr. T'Shaka's name, you will hit his, his subscribe button. Hit the little bell. The bell is, so that every time he goes live, you instantly notify. But if you go down in his description, everything's there. You hit the link, you go to his Gumroll account, you can get all of his books. He has lectures. He has everything up in there. So it's not just about talking, like what we hear right now. It's about action, but he gives you the action steps. So please, family, make sure you are supporting. Now, on the flip side, I was talking to King Simon, Professor Small. We're gonna get this book out this year.
Oh yeah, well, I'm big on getting the book out, but I've always made sure that I was an oral traditionalist, and
You are. Yes, I would definitely agree
with the spiritual power of it, because they're the ones that taught me. The book will come, and if it doesn't come, I've got at least there's at least 1,000 tapes in that shelves. There's 1,000 in this shelf, and so I have about 100 good books. Anybody can come and get this material and write. My children know what to do.
Okay, good. We like that.
And with me, through all of our days together. So we're good. I would love to get a piece out, especially on African sacred science before I leave. That one is important to me.
Yes.
Because even those of us who are traditionalists, we miss the boat on understanding what traditional African systems really are.
Yes.
And that there is only one African culture. It has ecological and socio-ecological variants, but the fundamental element of African culture, from North America to Jamaica to Haiti to Nigeria to Uganda, is fundamentally the same. The universe and nature is the divine, and we are an elemental part of that divinity. And that's what we're trying to explain to ourselves in culture. Culture is our fundamental educational system about our fundamental existing realities. And so if I could make that plain in a document, I would love to do that. I'm working on it.
Okay.
That's your essence. I can see why you'd want to do that.
Yes. All right.
All right, family. Well, it's been wonderful. Definitely want to give the shout out to the panel. Everyone in the chat, please show love to our esteemed panel of elders, Doctors Rosalind Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Oba T'Shaka, and Professor James Small. Definitely want to show them some love. We're definitely going to come back with a more enriching or equally enriching conversation on some of the topics we just kind of breezed over tonight, just touched the surface. So we definitely be on the lookout and be tuned in for that. With that being said, we are on the strive, on the move for 30,000 on YouTube. Please, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Also, please follow these other gentlemen and sisters on the panel as well. Dr. Oba T'Shaka's platform, Professor Smalls, and Dr. J's. They all have various different platforms. You can definitely show your love and follow them along in their journeys. With that, we're going to say good night to our panel. We're going to close out the show.
Good night.
Yes, good night.
Hotep.
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 All right, there it is. Okay, so family, again, we have Queen of Four on Wednesday. She's coming through, and King Randall will be on the show on Sunday. So, in the words of Professor Small, he didn't get a chance to say it this time. You just said peace and blessings.
Before we say that, I just want to make sure that, you know, people who are subscribed to the newsletter, it was a pretty decent audience in the building tonight. Sure, some of them maybe not be, they're not maybe happy people, but if they're not, make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. If you haven't seen the film HAPI, please go to www.hapifilm.com and get your copy. We have some announcements coming out soon. We're going to end the year, start the next year off on a very powerful note. So please be tuned in for all new HAPI news that's coming out. Yeah. And it's going to be exciting.
Yep. And you know what? Listen, if you guys are not connected to the newsletter, just in case I ain't Sam, I'm just saying if we're going to have, you know, some discounts, you want to make sure you are actually signed up to the newsletter. So hapifilm.com, hit the get connected button and get connected. All right, fam. We good, Taaqiy?
Yeah, just one more thing. So definitely shout out to King Simon and Lorenzo Small and the sister, I don't know her name, on the panel earlier. Like I said, Lorenzo Small, big part of everything that we're doing. Yeah, it's the L'Oreal. So definitely much love and respect to them for being a part of this experience tonight. Yes. Peace.
All right. Peace.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority. Honestly,
who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?